The story begins with our protagonist, Kenji. He's a kind person. He always helps people in need. One day, when he was going to school like any other day, he heard some bullies bullying a student in his class. The bullies, called Xinjiang and his group, told the student that he didn't have a mother. They said he only had one picture of her, which they were going to tear into pieces. They demanded money from him. If he didn't pay, they would tear the picture. Kenji was furious. He tried to talk things out, but they only listened when he gave them $100. They made it seem like they weren't doing anything wrong. They acted like they were being fair. The kid who was bullied thanked him and called him kind, which made Kenji very happy. Then, the kid asked Kenji why he was trying to be so kind. Kenji told him that he needed to do it because he had a reason. When he arrived at the school, everyone greeted him cheerfully. He was happy to see a girl named Sujin, who greeted him as well. She asked for his help in throwing out the trash bags. She praised him for helping out their classmates and told him how everyone in the class was talking about it. He was glad to hear her say that about him. Just then, we see the bullies who were playing games with the money they had taken from him. Xinjiang, the thug from earlier, called to Sujin. Sujin hesitantly greeted him. She looked troubled, which made Kenji think that they were bullying her. The bully called for her again and told Kenji to get lost. Sujin assured him that she would be all right and told him to go on ahead. Kenji was confused about what he should do. He wondered if he should call his uncle if the situation escalated. After he was gone, the rest of the thugs also went to their class, leaving those two alone. Sujin wanted him not to make it obvious when they were inside the school. We learned that these two were secretly dating. While they were flirting, we see that Kenji was still there, hiding from them. He was fuming with anger and felt betrayed. When he came back to his class, his eyes were dead from what he had seen. He messaged Sujin to meet him after school, as he had something to talk to her about. When school ended, they were both going to go home together like they used to before. Kenji finally mustered up the courage to ask her if she was really dating Xinjiang. She was put on the spot and got a little nervous, but she doesn't deny it. She says that they just started dating somehow, and that she was about to tell him. Kong was speechless. He didn't know what to say. We see a flashback where Sujin's drunk dad was looking for her after she ran away. He used to beat her after getting drunk. We see Kenji and Sujin hiding together. This is when she told him that she was never going to marry someone like his father. She was going to marry someone who was kind like Kenji. This is when Kenji decides to become a really kind person for her. Now in the present, Kenji confronts her about what she had said in the past. How she wanted to date someone who was kind. And Xinjiang was far from being kind. He was a bully. To which she replies that she dated a kind and friendly person once. But he was just too boring and nice all the time. A bad guy, on the other hand, they are rough, attractive, and way cooler. Kenji was stunned. All these years, his efforts to be kind to her were for nothing. She didn't care about nice guys. Now she was into bad boys. In the moment of desperation, he grabs her hand and starts saying stuff. Like he was way meaner than Xinjiang. He was acting to be a kind person all this time. He was not just a bully, he was a gangster. A gangster's blood runs through his veins. He was saying all this while crying continuously. But she just laughs at him and calls him a kind person, who was worried about her because she was dating a bully. Kenji tries to convince himself it is all right for her to date a bully. On the way to their home, Xinjiang takes Sujin with her and wants Kenji not to hang out with her anymore. Sujin stops him from picking on Kenji and takes him with her. While flirting in front of him, Kenji couldn't take it anymore. He had spent the last 10 years of his life trying to act kind, even when it was hard, and all of that was for nothing, so he decided to become a bad person himself. When he was saying a gangster's blood runs through his veins, he wasn't lying. When he enters his home, all gang members are bowing before him. His household was a gangster household, and he was going to show her what a really bad person looks like. He asked where his uncle was. Then, he came bursting through the door. He asked him to help him become a bad person. His uncle didn't know what had happened all of a sudden, but he had wanted to see this look on his face for a long time. He had worked hard for the past 10 years to become kind. So his uncle warned him that it would only take an instant to become bad. Kenji was ready to abandon all the work he had put in. The first thing his uncle told him to get rid of was his good and nice boy vibes. He needed to change his dressing sense as well. And he was also prohibited from smiling nicely. He needed to put on a serious face all the time. His uncle asked him why he wanted to become a bad person all of a sudden, to which he replied that he had no reason to be kind anymore. He was thinking about Sujin and Xinjiang. Even though he asked for their help, he still wasn't sure if he could become a bad person like them. His uncle number 2 came to his room to dress him up for the occasion. Kenji came out wearing gold chains and all, just like a thug or gangster. He was hesitant if he could really wear this in school, but his uncles assured him that he looked great. When he was walking down the school hallway, everyone was staring at him. He wanted to greet them badly, but his uncle prohibited him from doing that. When a girl greeted him, he tried to be rude to her, but started stuttering. When he entered the class, his friends greeted him. He tried to be rude to them too, but he stuttered again. Everyone was wondering what was wrong with him today and why he dressed like that. Sujin saw him and asked him to go to the cafeteria with her. He couldn't say no to her and agreed to go in a rude way. Everyone in the class thought they had a fight. Kenji was giving her the cold shoulder on their way. She asked him why he was giving her a cold shoulder. She said that he was acting like a different person. Kenji didn't deny it, but he told her that she was the one who changed first. After that, he told her to head to the cafeteria by herself. 10 years ago, he changed himself because of her. Now he was changing himself again because of her. This was the first time Kenji was skipping class. Behind the school building, he sees Xinjiang and a bunch of other guys skipping classes and smoking. Xinjiang goes to eat something outside with a girl. Kenji wanted to learn what guys like them do when they skip school. So, he follows them. He sees both of them being chummy with each other and wonders if he is dating this girl too. He couldn't take it that Shin was taking Sujin for granted. He was furious. They arrive at Shin's house. The girl just wanted to go to a ramen shop, so she refused to go inside. When he starts forcing her to come inside, she slaps him, which makes him angry. He was about to slap her as well. Kenji was not sure if he should call the cops on him. He decides to take matters into his own hands and throws a rock at him. But it hits the girl instead. He had messed up big time, but he was not giving up just yet. He throws another rock at him, but his ring gets thrown away as well. This time, the rock hit Shin straight on the forehead. While Shin was figuring out what was going on, Kenji took her hands and ran away. Shin screamed at him to kill him. The girl also yells at him for hitting her in the head, but she understands that he is trying to help her and goes along with him. Even though he did manage to pull that off on impulse, he didn't know what to do next. He stitches her up and explains the situation, but she already knows and jokes about it. She introduces herself as Yai. She was in the same class as he was, but she didn't recognize him. When he introduced himself as Kenji, she was shocked. She had heard about him, that he was kind to everyone and experienced firsthand. But Kenji keeps telling her that he is not kind, he is mean. He only helped her because she was in a serious situation. He asked her if she likes bad guys, like Xinjiang too. She told him that she liked guys who were free-spirited, but not someone like Shin. Kenji wonders if he would be able to become a trash like him as well, while she was laughing at him. Shin called him. Kenji asked her not to mention his name. Shin was pissed and asked him about the guy who helped her because he was wearing the same dress as their school. But she also threatens to go to the police if he ever talks to her like that and hangs up the phone. She didn't want the police to get involved herself because she was the one who hit him first. She thanks Kenji and leaves. During lunch, his friends ask him why he looks like he is shining. This makes him happy because he is trying to look like him. His friends freak out after hearing that. Just then, Yai comes there to eat lunch with him. She tells his friends that he helped her, but Kenji left first because he didn't want anyone to know about that incident. Yai goes with him too. His friends were happy for him on the outside, but inside they were super envious. Sujin also sees both of them working together. The teachers had asked for Kenji because he skipped a class. He didn't want to make them angry and started taking off the gold chains and all the accessories. He realizes that his ring is gone. That ring was given to him by his second uncle, who had gotten it from the boss himself. It was very precious to him. Kenji was panicking when he lost the ring. While he was looking for the ring in his class, Xinjiang came there and kicked him for blocking his way. Shin noticed that his back looked similar to the guy who threw that stone at him. He starts stomping on him and takes his anger out on him, while Sujin is just standing there and watching him get beaten up. Just then, he comes there and stops him, saying she was the one he should be angry at. He asks her again who was the guy who helped her, but she didn't answer him. As he was about to hit her, he started thinking who was he afraid of other than the teachers. She told him that the guy's name was S. Jing. We see Sun Zhang, who was a muscular guy and was sleeping in the class. Shin was scared of waking him up, but he couldn't just leave it be, so he tries to wake him up. When he doesn't wake up, he kicks his desk, shocking everyone in the class. Yai thought he would leave him alone because he was scared of him, but her plan was now busted. Sun Jing was annoyed by him. Shin asked him if he was the one who helped Yai that day. Sun Jing sees Yai and Kenji and says that he might have helped her. Shin gets angry, grabs Song by the collar, and threatens to finish him. Song just grabs his hands, making Shin come to his senses and realize who he was messing with. He lashes out at Yai and the class for staring at him. While leaving the class, he takes a closer look at Kenji, saying the guy looked about his size, but there was no way a loser like him could attack him, and he left after that. Kenji noticed the ring he was wearing. It belonged to his uncle, Yai. Yai immediately comes forward to help Kenji. Sujin is jealous and angry, seeing Yai being friendly with him. Yai asks Sujin for help, but Kong leaves, saying he is all right. While coming back home, he wonders how he should explain this to his uncle. When he enters the house, everyone is baffled and furious seeing his bruised face. They were preparing to go to war with whoever did this to him. His second uncle also sees the commotion. When he is filled in on what is going on, he is ready to fight. But the first uncle stops them, saying he needs to fight on his own. They have a strategy meeting to make him strong and good at fighting. But before that, he needed to score one victory on his own. His uncle suggests he beat someone weaker than him in a fight. After that, they would start his training. The next day, everyone wishes him luck. He was already panicking over how he should get back the ring from Shin. And now he also had to fight someone. Just then, he sees the grandma whom he used to help. But he remembers what his uncle told him and runs away while crying. Coincidentally, he meets the grandpa he used to help as well. And again, he runs while crying. Then he sees a few thug school students who crossed the road while the traffic was on. He also wants to do that. But when he tries, he gets scolded by a truck driver, making him apologize. Instinctively, he waits for the next round and runs as fast as he can. This time he managed to cross the road while the traffic was on. On the way, he sees Sujin and is about to greet her when he sees Shin Jiang with him. He hides from them and sees that she looks happy with him. So he decides to work even harder to become a bad person. He sees Yai and a few other girls extorting money from the same guy who was being bullied the last time. The other girl told Kenji to scram, and the kid thought he was saved now that he was here. Yai starts doing her makeup after seeing Kenji instead of helping him. Yai orders him to give all the money he had to him, or he would beat the shit out of him. His second uncle was watching all this and got emotional seeing their young master grow. It was like seeing his younger self. The girls were impressed by Kenji, saying he looked like a real man. But Yai was not happy with this. The guy gives him the money, thinking he was just faking it and would give it back. Ken splits the money and gives it to the girls. The girls say that he is on the same level as Shin Jiang, which makes him happy. But Yai is not impressed by this. While his uncle was going back, he bumped into Shin Jiang and saw the ring on his fingers. He is confused and shocked to see his ring and wonders if he is Kenji's friend. Shin keeps getting on his nerves, but he didn't fight him. He was praying that this guy wouldn't be his young master's friend, so that he could beat the hell out of him at the school. The chief teacher calls Kenji to the office. He told him to bring his father the next day because he was becoming a problem child. But Kenji immediately denies it because he knows it wouldn't be a good idea to bring his father there. The other teachers were surprised to see Kenji talking back. Kenji made an excuse, saying his father was out of town, and asked him to let him bring his uncle instead. Kenji's friend was worried about him and followed him to the office. He freaked out when he heard that they wanted him to bring his parents. He told his uncles that the teacher was asking to meet one of them. Every one of them wanted to be the one to go with him, so they decided to solve this with rock, paper, scissors. And the winner was the second uncle. He marched the first uncle, but gets smacked instead. The next day, the second uncle was ready to go to school with him in his very normal and formal dress. Kenji was speechless after seeing his second uncle drip and just asked him to hurry up. On the way, people suddenly start to greet the second uncle, making Kenji wonder how could he be so respected with that outfit and non-threatening face. The second uncle asked him if he was doing any bad things. The uncle then taught him how to spit like a gangster. He even showed him how to walk like a man and ordered him to walk like that until they arrived at the school. Kenji was embarrassed and wished that the first uncle was here with him. He wished that he hadn't run into Sujin. The students recognize Kenji, but they wonder why he was with a gangster. When they arrive at the school, the second uncle asks him if he still has the soul ring that he had given to him. Kenji gets nervous and lies to him, saying he put it in his room to keep it safe. In the hallway, he sees him with his uncle and is confused as to why he is doing this. Kenji hides his face from her. Kenji showed him the teacher's office and told him that he had to get to his class, but he wonders if he is going to be okay. When he arrived in the teacher's office, the teachers couldn't believe that he was Kenji's uncle. They even considered calling the cops on him, but the head teacher assured them that he would take care of him. The junior teachers were impressed by him. The head teacher took him to the consultant room to talk to him privately, while the other teacher admired his brave look. But as soon as he got along with him, the head teacher started sucking up to him, praising how they treasure Kenji the most. He even poured him some tea to please him. The teacher asked him why he called him here. It was because Kenji was misbehaving lately, even though he was the next candidate for the school president. The second uncle asks him if he is calling Kenji the problem child, with a slight smile on his face. The head teacher thought he was mad and took it back, which made him mad for real this time. The second uncle was happy that Kenji was being a problem child. The head teacher was confused, but he knew that they needed to be on the same frequency if he wanted to live. Even though he didn't know why, he just felt like he should say that he was a very problematic child. The second uncle was glad to hear that. Then the second uncle asked the head teacher if there were students who were extorting valuables from other students. The head teacher freaked out and denied that allegation. The second uncle left in anger after that. The head teacher was finally relieved that he left. The second uncle thought about the bully who stole his soul ring and wondered if he could meet him. He was fuming with anger, although he wanted to find that guy and kill him. But he remembered what the first uncle had told him about letting Kenji fight his own battle. Zhang Chell got lucky this time. On the other hand, John Chell was staring at the ring and was planning to sell it and buy a motorbike with that money. He was thankful that he got hit by that rock in class. Kenji was worried about the meeting. He asked his friend if he thought that the meeting went well. His friend's reaction said it all. Just then, the head teacher entered the class. He avoided eye contact with Kenji. Kenji wondered if his uncle had threatened the teacher. He was going to ask his uncle directly. Kenji interrupted the class, asking for permission to go to the bathroom. The teacher got angry, but when he saw that it was Kenji, his demeanor completely changed. He permitted him to go. This made him sure that something must have happened between them. He called his first uncle, but he was busy doing something important. They were throwing a surprise party for Kenji for being a problem child. The third uncle handed him the phone. When Kenji asked what he talked to the teacher about, he said that he took care of it. This made Kenji even more anxious. Before he could ask him more, the first uncle took the phone. He reminded him of the mission that he had to carry out that day, to beat up someone weaker than him. After he hung up, Kenji started his search for someone weaker than him. He put himself on a level 1 scale to compare his strength to the other students. He saw 2 students coming towards him and wondered if he could beat them, but they were slightly stronger than him. He kept looking for someone weaker than him, but he couldn't seem to find someone. Even his friends were stronger than him. He got tired of searching, but he couldn't find anyone weaker than him. He was pondering in the bathroom when the big guy, Sun Jin, asked him to move out of the way as he was blocking the sink. We see that Sun Jin was on level 70, a number he could only hope to achieve. He said to himself how someone like him should have been the son of the Fire Bear Gang's boss. When he thought there was no one weaker than him, the guy whom he used to save from bullies, and the guy from whom he extorted money today, was there. He was asking for the $40 that he pretended to extort from him. Kenji lit up seeing him. The guy was on level 0. While the guy was complimenting how real his acting looked this morning, Kenji grabbed him by the collar. He asked him to become the sacrificial lamb for his first victory. Kenji apologized to him before attacking Sangu. While Sangu was confused about what he did wrong, he asked Sun Jong for help. Kenji didn't realize he was still there and thought he was done for. But instead of helping him, Sun Jong just left without saying anything. This was Kenji's chance. All he needed to do was just hit him once. He even closed his eyes to do that, but even then, he couldn't do it and let go of him. Sang Yurin was released. He cursed the person, but couldn't bring himself to hurt him. He wondered if he was truly mean and if he had become a bad person. It didn't feel as great as he had hoped. Was all the time he put into being kind just going to disappear? He remembered the times he saved the guy, even if he grabbed him by the collar. He felt horrible, but was determined to be mean for Sujin. The only reason he had lived as a kind person was for her, but now he had no reason to be. When he got to class, everyone was looking at him. Sangu had told the whole class about the incident. Sujin didn't believe it and asked Kenji if it was true. Even the other classmates didn't think he could do something like that. When Sujin kept asking, Kenji asked her to just stop. He pointed out how she used to hate people who wore makeup and didn't dress properly. He said, "Look at you now." Kenji wasn't criticizing her. Instead, he complimented her, saying she looked good. Unfortunately for him, Shin Chel heard him. He thought Kenji was flirting with Sujin, even though he had ordered him to stay away from her. Kenji tried to explain, but Shin slapped him. He told the others to grab Kenji, saying he needed to teach him a lesson. Shin started beating him, punching him in the stomach. As Shin was about to hit him again, Sujin asked him to stop. Seeing them defending each other, Shin figured something was going on between them. He left Kenji alone for a moment and was about to beat Sujin up first. Kenji screamed at him to stop, calling him human trash. He was okay with Shin dating Sujin and even beating him in front of her, but he wasn't going to let him beat her. Kenji threatened to call him if he even touched her. Even Jun, who was sleeping, woke up from his scream. Sujin had never heard him say those words before and was surprised. Shin mocked him, pointing out what a bad situation he was in. Kenji thought about the past and how Sujin changed to date someone like Shin. He was going to beat her boyfriend to become the bad guy that she liked. Kenji expected to get hit, but he tried to kick first. Before Shin could hit him, he got hit in the face. It wasn't Kenji who hit him, it was SJU. Everyone was surprised to see SJU get involved. Shin yelled at him, saying he had gone crazy. But SJU didn't stop and punch him again. Meanwhile, his friends didn't try to help, as they didn't want to die. Shin asked him why he was interfering and why he always bothered him. SJU told him that he was the one who always caused trouble before punching him with his left hand. Shin fell to the ground after that hit. The others took Shin and left, except for Kenji. SJU offered Kenji a hand and took him to the nurse's office. Kenji was worried that his shoulder might break from SJU's heavy punches. Shin and his two lackeys were planning to get back at SJU. But even if all three of them attacked him, they would still lose. SJU wasn't even using his full strength. He just punched with his shoulder. The two Lees were scared to fight him, but Shin had other plans. If he couldn't beat SJU himself, he would use his connections. SJU took Kenji to the nurse's office. As he was leaving, Kenji asked why SJU didn't stop him from hitting Sue in the bathroom. SJU replied that Sue must have had a reason, since he doesn't do things without reason. Kenji felt bad, as he had almost hit Sue without reason. Then Kenji asked why SJU always saves him from Shin. SJU didn't give a clear answer. He just said that Shin deserved to get hit, and Kenji just happened to be saved. He left after that, not answering any more questions. In the cafeteria, he was trying to befriend Kenji's friends. But the smarter one realized she just wanted to get close to Kenji. The other friend told her that he didn't want to be friends with a bully like her. He apologized in a dry tone. He tried to flatter them by asking if they had friends who played golf. The less smart friend thought he was trying to be his girlfriend. He immediately said he didn't like bullies, but if it was then he was in. Both of them had no idea what he was talking about. He kept talking nonsense, which started to anger She asked them one last time if they knew Kenji's type. The less smart friend suggested she ask Sujin, who had been friends with him for a long time. The smart one thinks to himself, how stupid I am. She came to them because she didn't want to ask her. She decided to ask him directly after she was gone. The dumb friend asked the other friend if he was into him. On the way, two of her friends told her that Kenji was in the nurse's office after getting beaten up. She ran to the nurse's office after hearing this. Her friends were worried that she might be into losers. He was feeling anxious and was concerned about him, not knowing why. She rushes to the nurse's office while stumbling upon things. We see that Kenji was trying to hold his voice while crying. When he heard the door opening, he thought it was the doctor and that she might see him crying. So he pretends to be asleep. She asked him about his condition while being angry at Shinjong. She didn't disturb him while he slept and left the food there. She left the room in anger and determined to teach Shinjong a lesson. After she is gone, Kenji wonders why she brought food for him. Just then, he heard someone else at the door, so he pretended to sleep again. It was Sujin at the door. He didn't want her to see his crying face, so he kept up his act. Sujin saw the food that he left for him. She picked it up and threw it in the dustbin, while exclaiming how annoying he was. She also said that Kenji didn't like girls like her. She was about to put her hand on his head, which made Kenji flustered. But before that, Shinjong came there with the doctor. The doctor asked her if she knew how he got hurt. Both Shinjong and Kenji were waiting for her response. She made an excuse to save her boyfriend by saying that he fell down the stairs. Kenji was holding back his tears, while Shinjong was just disappointed in her. The doctor just thought that he must have fallen down the stairs while helping someone like always. She also says how lucky Kenji was to have a friend like her. After she left, the doctor noticed that Kenji was up. He was crying while holding back his voice. The doctor thought he was enduring the pain so that Sujin didn't get worried. She asked him to just give her a moment. She assured him to cry as much as he wanted. She was not going to let anyone come in. Kenji cried his heart out after hearing her lie to save her boyfriend over him. Her childhood friend, meanwhile, Shin, was asking his lackey to sell his ring in the market. Just then, he comes there yelling at him. The other two leave the two of them alone. She lashes out at him for beating up Kenji. He pointed out that he was the victim today, but she didn't believe that he could be the victim. She was disgusted with herself for liking him at one point. Shin blames her for falling for him, as he didn't approach her. She did. Meanwhile, Sujin couldn't get in touch with Shin. So, she came looking for him. When she finds out Shin is with Shin threatened to beat even her if she kept coming closer to him. He blamed her for liking him, even though she exactly knew who she was. Sujin was shocked to hear he lied to him. Shin further goes on to ask her out. Even after all that, Sujin couldn't believe her eyes and started crying. He obviously denied him and threatened to report him to the police. Meanwhile, Sujin was trying to convince herself that Shin was doing that because she kept hitting on him persistently. He was doing that to get rid of her and that he might be a bad guy, but he would never do that to her. She came out asking them to stop crying. He was surprised to see her there. Shin was fed up with these ladies making a fuss and was annoyed at her. Sujin asked him if he was really dating Yi. Shin told her that he wasn't, and that he was going to break up with her too. Sujin couldn't believe what he was saying. It was like her whole world came crashing down. He was surprised that these two were dating. Shin had enough, so he left without saying anything. He asked her if she is really dating Shin, and if she's okay, but she was too shocked to say anything at the time. Kenji left the nurse's office without any treatment. He was also trying to convince himself that she would have done the same thing for him if he were her boyfriend, and that it was his fault for not being her boyfriend to do that. He needed to become a bad guy by beating someone up, but he didn't want to beat someone weaker than him. But there was one person he was fine with beating: Shin. When he got back home, he noticed that it was unusually quiet. When he goes further inside, he sees all his uncles leaning on their heads. When he was wondering what was going on, he heard a familiar voice. It was his father's voice, who was slightly impressed that he was home, even though he should be at school, and he was even dressed differently. Kenji was shocked to see his father all of a sudden after all this time. He asked him why he was there. His father ordered him to sit first. Kenji instinctively sits down. He was here after 3 years because he had heard about him being a problem child. Only then did Kenji notice the poster behind him celebrating him being a problem child. But the father was disappointed to hear that he was the type of problem child who gets beaten up instead of conquering the school and any turfs. That's the reason all the uncles were in that state. As punishment, he said he didn't give Kenji 10 years to celebrate getting beaten up. He ordered the first uncle to begin his training tomorrow. Kenji tried to reason with him, but his father reminded him that he gave him time because he wanted to be kind to a girl. He said that all this time, he was just getting beaten up. He also stated that he would not force him if he rejected the training. But in return, he would not see his face for the rest of his life. This meant that they would no longer be father and son. He said he had no use for a pathetic and weak son like him. Kenji burst into tears, telling him how hard the last 10 years were for him as well. He said he didn't choose to be born as the son of a gangster. He wanted to live his own life. The boss told him he was not going to wait forever for him to succeed him. He had already expected him to reject the successor's training and had a different plan in mind. He was going to cut all ties with him. He told Kenji that there were a lot of people around the world who could be called his son, but he was hoping Kenji would be his successor. Kenji asked for some time to think about it, but he had already given him 10 years. He couldn't wait any longer. He had until tomorrow to give his answer. If he didn't accept the training, their relationship would be over. Kenji was devastated, calling him the worst father ever. His uncles were worried. They didn't expect the boss to come all of a sudden. Not only that, but if Kenji was no longer the boss's son, their faction would also be discarded. The first uncle went to talk to Kenji. He asked him how he was and that he got beaten up again. He asked him if he at least beat one weak guy, but he told him that he couldn't do it. The first uncle suggested why he didn't get stronger. Then he could beat any bad guy he wanted. He asked him to accept the successor's training to get stronger. But Kenji said he still wasn't ready for it. The first uncle told him that he needed to grow stronger if he wanted to protect the things he cared about. He left after that. While Kenji was pondering what he needed to save, he got a call from Sujin. She told him how she was having a hard time while crying. Kenji asked her for details of what happened. He was furious at Shin-jong for making her cry. He went to his uncle and announced that he had made up his mind. He was going to accept the successor's training to beat the bad guys. He was going to become the worst person. He requested his uncles to help him get stronger. They assured him and asked him to leave it to them. They had been waiting for this moment for 10 years. The first uncle informed him that he couldn't go to school during the training. Kenji agreed to that as well. This time he was committed to learning how to fight. The first uncle left him in his second uncle's care. He used to be an athlete himself. It was an emotional moment for the uncles. The second uncle asked him about the ring he had given to him. Again, he asked him to tell the truth this time. Kenji didn't lie this time and told him that he lost the ring to the guy he wanted to beat up. The second uncle told him that if he wanted, he could take it back from the guy in a few seconds. Although that would be the easiest way to get it done, Kenji wanted to get it back on his own after beating him. This was the answer that the second uncle was hoping he'd give. He hugged him and ordered him to change into the battle suit for their training. Kenji understood the assignment. Since he had decided to accept the successor's training, there was no turning back now. From this moment forward, he was no longer Kiang, who was a normal student. He was now the Fire Bee Gang successor, Kiang. The story continues with the second uncle preparing Kenji for the successor training. He starts his training with a basic physical fitness training test. They start with the 3 common exercises. The first one being squat. He first gave him the empty bar to lift without any weights on it, but he was struggling even to pick that up. He could only squat 20 kilograms. The second uncle was looking worried now. Then they moved on to the bench press. Kenji was ready to bench press, but he pointed out if he must help him in that position. Kenji could bench press only 20 kilograms as well. The second uncle realized that he was weak as F. He wasn't sure what kind of training he should give him. Then they moved on to the last exercise, which was deadlift. The second uncle didn't have any expectations at this point, but much to his surprise, Kenji could easily lift the bar even after they put on lots of weight. It was easy work for him. He told the uncle that he could go for it even more easily. The second uncle was confused as to how that was even possible. He figured that he must have built up his muscles from always helping others in need. To test his grip power, his second uncle challenged him to arm wrestle. Kenji said to him that he had no chance of winning against him. Even the other uncles were pointing out how unfair that was, but the second uncle had a theory for his source of strength, and he wanted to test that. The match begins, and Kenji starts overpowering him almost immediately. The other uncles thought he was going easy on him on purpose, but only the second uncle knew he was giving it his all. Even the other uncle started to wonder if he was overpowering him in wrestling. It was indeed the power of his grip that helped him deadlift. Ever since he was a kid, he has always given them body massages for 10 years. During this time, his muscles grew, and he acquired a monstrous grip. The second uncle was proud of him, but he wasn't going to let him win easily. He went all out, but even then, Kenji wasn't even budging. The second uncle lost eventually. He was sure that if he guided him to use his power, he could become the strongest person in the school. Even unifying a whole territory wouldn't be impossible. This was the first time he saw the Fire Bear Gang's image in him. The second uncle asked him to lie beside him and told him that he had the potential to become way stronger. But Kenji didn't believe him and thought that he let him win on purpose. The second uncle assured him that he'd train him in a way that he'd never lose to anyone again. And to do that, they'd need to start closed-door training. During this training, contact from the outside world was prohibited. Kenji was hesitant at first, but the second uncle told him that if he wanted to protect what he loved, he needed to make this sacrifice. If he did that, he would make him the strongest for sure. Kenji agreed to the condition, and they worked inside the training room like a man. 3 days had passed since then. Kenji wasn't coming to school. Sun Jun wondered if something happened to him and asked his friends. They also tried to contact him, but he wasn't picking up their phone. They even went to his house, but seeing his uncles, they got scared and ran away. Sun Jun was slightly worried about him. When he returns home from school, he is greeted by his little sister, who is waiting for him outside alone. She told him how bored she was because recently, that kind of older brother wasn't coming to play with her. She was talking about Kenji. She was worried, thinking he might have fainted somewhere while helping someone, as he always came to her when she needed help. She asked Sun Jun to check up on him. Sun Jun agreed to her request. He took his address from the school and came to see him. He encountered Kenji's uncles who were suspicious of him, but when he told them he was Kenji's friend, they treated him like a prince and let him inside. But the first uncle scolds them for letting anyone in without identifying their identity. Sun Jun was glad that he had his wallet with him. Otherwise, things could have been horrifying for him. The second asks about the purpose of his coming there. Jun replied that he was worried about Kenji. He hadn't come to school or answered their calls. The first uncle saw the judo club bag that he had. He called for the second uncle. When the second uncle saw him, he immediately recognized him. The second uncle reminded the first uncle that he was close to Lee Park. He was the guy he was going to introduce to him. They had a meal together once due to their mutual friend. They take him to the training room. Jun was surprised to see Kenji training instead of attending school. The second uncle asked Jong to spar with him. But Jong thought that he was being unreasonable. There was no way Kenji was going to defeat him in judo. There was a huge gap in strength too. The second uncle advised him to watch closely. What Kenji was doing wasn't judo. Kenji grabbed the third uncle by the collar. Songjun points out that his positioning was wrong. He wasn't using his left arm, but only his right arm. There was no way he could do that without both of his arms. But, much to his surprise, Kenji lifted him with the strength of just one hand. He slammed him onto the ground. He called his technique a deadly one-arm throw. S-Jing was speechless after seeing his crazy grip strength. It was illogical to see him do that with his physique. The second uncle says that S-Jun was on the same level as their mutual friend Dupak. He could be considered one of the top few in the country. Kenji wasn't looking for any gold medal. He just wanted to be stronger, desperately, to beat some guys. S-Jun comes forward to spar with him, without the second uncle asking him. Kenji was surprised by S-Jong there. The second uncle explained to him that he wanted him to fight someone his age, someone who was much stronger than he was. If he manages to stand his ground against him, most of the other school kids would be a piece of cake for him. But Kenji was terrified of him. He had been training for only a few days. The difference between their techniques and physique was huge. In the first round, S-Jun completely overpowered Kenji. He didn't even have to use any of his techniques to deal with him. But Kenji gets up again. This time he didn't get caught by Song. He stepped back in time and was now in a boxing stance. But Song Jun could see his punch coming from miles away and easily blocked him. Even though he blocked it, Kenji's punches felt heavy due to his grip strength. Kenji then tries to tackle him. S-Jun thought to himself how foolish that technique was against him, who was way more weight than him. But much to his surprise, Kenji wasn't trying to tackle him. He started pinching him with his crazy grip strength. He started crushing his thighs. The pain was unbearable. So, S-Jun fought back but missed. S-Jun didn't expect him to use an underhand trick like that. The third uncle gets angry at the second uncle for teaching him such a cowardly technique. He told him that he wasn't just pinching Song Jong, but causing huge damage to his muscle with his monstrous grip. It was a different kind of acupressure. S-Jun couldn't use his leg for a moment. Kenji attacked him again, which S-Jun easily blocked. He asked him if he wanted to take him on, but at this point, Kenji wasn't even listening to him. Kenji attacked S-Jun while he was talking. He punched him in the neck, which pissed him off. S-Jun asked him if he was targeting his Adam's apple. Kenji apologized to him and explained that he couldn't reach his chin because he was too tall for him. But it was too late. S-Jun calls his moves cowardly and is ready to take him on for real this time. A few moments later, we see that they both were out of breath and Kenji was on the ground. S-Jun asked him why he lost to someone like Shurinan when he was this strong. The second uncle informed him that he never got into a fight and always avoided it cowardly. He used to get scared even before the fight started. That's why he needed to fight someone strong like S-Jun to get rid of that mindset. The second uncle expressed his gratitude and guided him to the dinner table. After he is gone, the second uncle goes to check up on Kenji, but he is surprised to see him smiling. Kenji says to him how he was feeling refreshed after fighting. The second uncle could beef for them. Song Jun was a little surprised because he doesn't normally get to eat that stuff. The second uncle was blunt and asked him to train with Kenji for 1 week. He would provide for his food and other needs. But he couldn't agree to come there every day during the night, as he had a sister. The uncle asked him to come after his school, but he had a judo club after school. But the second uncle took care of that. He called his senior, D.W. Park, and told him that he was giving Song Jun special training for a week. He promised to give him special training in judo after he was done practicing with the young master. While eating the meal, S-Jun looked a little disappointed. Kenji asked him if he didn't like the food, but that was not the case. Kenji requests the second uncle for something. While S-Jun is leaving, Kenji walks out with him and gives him the beef for his younger sister as well. S-Jun was happy and smiled slightly because he knew she would love it. The next day at school, he kept messaging Kenji but got no reply. She was worried that he might have been hospitalized after the beating. Seeing her so frustrated, her friends realized that she is serious about Kenji. They suggest she goes to his home with his friends. That way it wouldn't be awkward. She calls them geniuses for it, but then realizes that she didn't even tell them about Kenji. She asked them how they knew, but it was so obvious that it wouldn't take a genius to figure out what was going on. But when she goes to ask his friends, they deny it. It was because they were busy pushing their rank in an online game. The smart one was on silver, and the other one was on bronze. He trampled on their ego when she told them that she was on the platinum level. This turned on their rage button. She even told them her ID, which was Princess E. They were baffled to see that she wasn't lying. After she couldn't pursue them, she was feeling down. But then she sees S-Jong and asked him to go with her. He agrees to go with her. She thanked him for doing so, to which S-Jong replied that he was going to Kenji's house too. She freaked out as she hadn't even mentioned his name yet. S-Jong informed her that everyone knew about it. At this point, she started flustering. Hearing that, a senior sees them together and asks his friend if it is her sister with S-Jong. This guy was the mutual friend that the second uncle was talking about, the leader of the judo club, Look Park. He replied that it was okay if she was with him because he trusted him. On the other hand, Shin Zhang and his friend went to a jewelry shop to sell the ring. They were wearing suits so that they looked adult. But there was no one in the shop and it was empty. Only one bald guy was sitting behind the desk. Shin asked his friend if something was wrong because he was trembling like crazy. Just then, the bald guy started singing. A few men came running and they shot down the shooter. Shin screamed at the bald guy for trying to mess with them. We see that this guy was the second uncle. The second uncle accused him of stealing his ring. Shin realized that he was sold out by his friend, who was still trembling. Shin told him the truth about how he found the ring on the road. He was ready to give it back, but the second uncle didn't want it. It annoyed Shin, and he was ready to fight him, thinking he might not be all that strong. But the second uncle punched him in the chest with his knuckle ring. Shin was having a hard time breathing, and he begged him to stop. The second uncle warned him never to sell the ring. He told him to wear it wherever he goes, because the owner of that ring would find him and collect it. He threatened to kill him if he ever sold the ring. Shin agreed to all that, but the second uncle was still not quite satisfied. He points out that Shin has a lot of hair and orders his men to bring the shaver. He and Young arrive at Kenji's place. One of the uncles welcomes them and takes them to the training room. He was surprised to see Kenji's house and realized how rich he was. They meet the second uncle in the training room. She immediately recognizes him from the school. The second uncle remarks that he didn't know Kenji had a girlfriend. He started getting flustered and said she was not his girlfriend, not yet. She was making others aware that she was into Kenji for real. When Kenji came out of the training room, he was blushing to see him. He was looking way stronger than the last time they met. He asked why she was there, to which she replied that he wasn't coming to school. She said that this was their last day of closed room training. The second uncle asked her to observe them, but she didn't know what she was supposed to observe. Young and Kenji were going to go toe-to-toe against each other. Young complimented him, saying he had improved a lot. The second uncle thought to himself how great of a choice it was to let him train with someone his age. Young grabbed him by the collar, so Kenji attacked his joint. But before he could do that, Young tackled him with just one hand, surprising Kenji that he could do that too. After they were done training, they sat to eat dinner. He asked him why he was not coming to school or replying to their messages. He replied that he was in closed-door training. Song Young explained to her what closed-door training was. Now that his training was over, the second uncle returned his phone. He was about to take a look at what she had sent him. She freaked out and asked him not to read it in front of them, to read it when they were gone. Kenji agreed to that. Jun couldn't help but smile. He confronted him for laughing at her. The uncles were happy to see Kenji having a good time with his friends. They had never seen him like that before. Soon, Young and Kenji left after having dinner. They were still fighting each other over every small thing. The second uncle reminded Kenji that he should go to sleep, as he was going to school tomorrow. The next morning, Kenji was ready for school. His uncle sewed wires in his collar to make it look cool. Everyone else greeted them and made way for them. When Kenji got outside, he was surprised to see all the cars. The second uncle told him that they were going to accompany him to school. Kenji wondered if he made a mistake by taking the successor training. When they got near the school, the driver stopped the car and let him walk to the school on his own. Kenji was super happy that they let him do that. On the way, he saw Shin Zhang standing there and wondered what he was doing there all alone. Shin saw him and told him to just keep moving. But Kenji smiled and said that he didn't want to. Shin was all alone, and this was his chance to get back at him. Shin was already annoyed while waiting for someone, and now Kenji was pushing him even more. Kenji asked him to show his right hand, because there was something that he was looking for. We see that Kenji's hands are looking kind of chiseled from all the training that he has been doing for the past week. While Shin was getting angrier, Kenji suddenly came closer to him, startling him. He used his technique called pickaxe and dug his fingers into his shoulder. Shin screamed in pain and was baffled at what he was doing. He kicked him off of him and threatened to beat the crap out of him. Just then, he saw something shining in the dark. It was the second uncle who signaled to him that he was going to die. At first, Shin didn't understand why he was there. Then, after thinking about it for a minute, things started to make sense to him. The guy who threw a rock at him was none other than Kenji, and the owner of the ring was also him. Meaning, all of the humiliation that he was getting was because of Kenji. He couldn't control his anger. After figuring it out, he screamed his lungs out and charged at him while screaming he was going to kill him. But Kenji caught his punch. He remembered what the second uncle had instructed him, how he should use his unbelievably strong grip strength, because once the opponent is caught, he'd feel hell. Kenji crushed his fist like a potato. Shin didn't understand what was going on. He wondered if this was the same loser Kenji he knew. Even if his grip was strong, there were still limitations to what he could do. Shin knew this. He started punching him. All Kenji did was block, even though it hurt. But this was nothing compared to Sun Zhang's punches. Just then Shin looked at his second uncle. He remembered what he had instructed him while trimming his hair. He had ordered him to get beaten by the owner of the ring and let him take the ring away, but make it look natural. Shin blamed his friend for selling him out. But the second uncle informed him that he tried to cover for him. The result was him getting his hair trimmed down as well. Not only that, but he also lost his eyebrows when he tried to run away and got caught. Kenji asked him if he was going overboard, as they were just students. But the second uncle didn't care if they were just students. He threatened to hunt him down if he tried anything funny. Shin Zhang chilled, swallowed his pride, and accepted every condition. Now, in the present time, Shin couldn't believe he was going to get beaten by a loser like him. His pride wouldn't allow this to happen. But he knows he's dead if he hits Kenji even once. He stopped his punch midway and brought his face forward to let him hit. Kenji punched him hard, to the point his nose started bleeding. But Kenji didn't understand why he did that and asked him, while giving him a hand. Shin wondered why he was being friendly all of a sudden. But he wasn't being friendly, he just wanted the ring. He used his pickaxe technique on him again and took away the ring from him. He couldn't believe he finally did it. His uncles came out of the shadows to congratulate him. Kenji asked them what they were doing there, to which they replied that they just got there. Shin didn't understand what was going on, why he was calling them uncle and they were calling him young master. After all of this, the second uncle asked him to get in the car again. He told them that he was almost at the school, but they insisted that they had to drop him off in front of the gate. Kenji had thought he avoided it, but it was inevitable. Kenji's friend and the other students in the school were wondering why there were so many black cars in front of their school. His friend imagined they were some kind of gangsters. Even the teachers were wondering who it was. But the head teacher already knew what was coming next. It was embarrassing for Kenji, but he didn't care at this point and just wanted to get this over with. All the gangsters got out of their cars and lined up in front of the car to welcome their young master. He also saw this and wondered if this was what she thought it was. His friends also recognized one of the uncles from Kenji's house. Kenji got out of the car. All the gangsters bowed before him and wished him a good day at school. It was an emotional moment for the uncles because after 17 long years, they were finally able to drop him off at school. The friends of he started interrogating her if she knew about it, and that's why she liked him. Because being bullied was no longer sufficient for him. So she wanted to be a gangster, but he was baffled and dumbfounded as well. The dumb friend asked the other friend if he knew that Kenji was the young master of those gangsters. But it was his first time seeing that too. Even his best friend had no idea. Kenji met with S. Jing on the way, who pointed out his flashy entrance. Kenji told him how embarrassed he was feeling. S. Jung also commented on his weird work and asked him to do it properly. He was persistent in doing it. Li Yiji's friend asked her not to just stand there dozing off and to get a hit on her. She called for them and proposed to work together with them. Kenji's friends were also surprised to see him being this close to those two. The demo guy asked if he really didn't know. He didn't know because he hadn't been friends with him for that long. But the smarter Jae Yun had been friends with him for 10 years now. It was weird that even he didn't know. Jae Yun was disappointed but still tried to convince him that he must have his reasons. The English teacher was asking the head teacher to do something about it. But seeing the second uncle, he couldn't even move because just that one guy was equivalent to 17 people. This wasn't something he could handle on his own. They needed to organize an emergency meeting. In the teachers' meeting, they were all against Kenji. But the principal didn't want them to say stuff like that to a guy like him. But even though the principal adored him, the fact that he was from a gangster family couldn't be ignored. The principal assured them that he would talk to him personally. But the head teacher remarked that it wasn't enough to just talk to him. He suggested they transfer him to a different school ASAP. The current student council president was surprised. His assistant asked him how he managed to hide it from them all this time. He replied that he wasn't hiding it. He was genuinely kind to others. Although he didn't have any intentions toward Kenji, he couldn't let him be the next student council president. Their school was a role model to other schools. Their school would be ridiculed if the words got out. When Kenji entered the class, everyone started looking at him. Sangha screamed at him, saying how he knew that he was a devilish person. The rest of the class also started murmuring about him. They were saying how he was a con artist. He was just acting kind to fool everyone and hide that he was a gangster. One of the girls asked Sujin if she knew about it, but she also had no idea. Seeing them talk like that about him was just too much for him. He remembered the time when they were all used to being friendly with him. But now, they were talking behind his back and were terrified of him. SJ, and he asked him if he was okay and why he wasn't getting in class. Kenji started panicking and was about to throw up. So, he ran towards the washroom with tears in his eyes. He remembered what the first uncle had told him, but he took that lightly. But the worst was yet to come. On the way, he met his friends and greeted them, thinking at least they'd understand him. But the look in their eyes said it all. They were terrified of him and walked past him without saying anything. This was what hurt him the most. He couldn't stop his tears any longer. He asked them why they were acting like that while crying in pain. He asked them to wait up and hear him out. June stops and, in anger, says how he didn't believe him when he said he wanted to become a bad guy like Shinjong-chi. This is how he was from the start. He was the son of a gangster. With a shocked expression, Kenji said that he was about to tell him, when the other friend interrupted him. He said how he should have never gotten involved with him, and that he trusted him even though his ankles looked sketchy. They convinced themselves, thinking that they just looked like that, but they were really gangsters. Kenji tries to explain, but he asked him to just answer if he was a gangster or not. Kenji had no choice but to agree with him. Jong-un said to him that he should have at least told him about this. Kenji remembered the time, 3 years ago, when Jong-un saw some gangsters getting arrested. He expressed his hate towards them. His dream was to become a police officer and catch them all. The hate towards them had something to do with his past. That's the reason why he didn't tell him about his being a gangster, the thing he hated the most. Kenji tried to explain, saying he was looking for the right opportunity to tell him. But he pointed out, how was it possible that he didn't get the chance to tell him for 10 years? He went as far as to ask Kenji if he even considered him as his friend. Kenji was speechless and baffled. Just then, June and he came there and asked them what was going on. Jong-un told them to go with their new friends, the bully Lei, and the top fighter Jong, and that losers like them weren't qualified to be his friends. June, and he didn't understand what that was about, but Kenji was completely devastated and fell on his knees. The story continues with Song Jun and E being shocked, seeing him in that state. They took him outside to catch a breath. He asked him if he didn't know this was going to happen, and that he should have been ready for it. June got annoyed at her for being so insensitive, but she wasn't wrong. Kenji asked E if she felt better after smoking. They both were baffled and simultaneously shouted, "No!" He asked them why he couldn't do it. He was a gangster, after all. He had nothing to say to that. Kenji had decided that if everyone was scared of him, just because he was the son of a gangster, he was going to fully embrace it and act like a gangster's son. Jung advised him that he'd gain nothing from smoking cigarettes. Kenji pointed out how unfair it was that they started to treat him like that just because he was the son of a gangster. They made it seem like he'd harm them, even though all he ever wanted was to be kind to them. He felt betrayed that they just turned on him like that. Sun Jing explained to him how he would have reacted the same way if he suddenly started seeing gangsters crowd in an area. He suggested he give up if it was this hard for him, but after coming this far, he couldn't back down now. Kenji got a call and left to meet the person on the call. He was looking angry, making you wonder if he was okay. The student council president called him. He asked Kenji if he was a gangster. Kenji didn't expect such questions. He asked if it was really that important. It was important because it could ruin the school's reputation. The president was also disappointed that such a kind-hearted guy came from a gangster family. He was going to talk to the teacher, but now he was sure Kenji wouldn't change. The president said, "That's not the real you," which finally pushed Kenji over the edge. Kenji remarked how he had lived kindly for 10 years, and people treated him differently just because of something that happened that morning. He couldn't look past that. As he left, Kenji told him that he didn't care about being the student council president. The president said if he planned to take over his family business, there was no need for him to come to the school anymore. He would only ruin the school's atmosphere. Kenji replied that he would do as he pleased, and then he left. After that, the president thought to himself that Kenji was indeed a kind guy. He was just angry because everyone was treating him that way. The balance of power in their school had been destroyed. A big storm was coming, and Kenji could be the one to deal with all the scum of the school. This was what was going on in the president's mind. On the other hand, the others were still teaching Shinjong a lesson. They ordered him to drop out of the school if he wanted to live. They told him that he should have picked a fight with someone his size. After they were gone, Shin thought to himself that he just couldn't let Kenji trample all over him. His ego wouldn't allow it, even if they killed him afterward. He was going to get revenge on Kenji. He racked his brain to find any weakness, anything that gave him an upper hand over Kenji. Just then, he remembered that Sujin and Kenji were childhood friends and called her. He knew that Sujin was still head over heels for him. All he needed to do was comfort her and get information from her. Sujin got the call and lied to her friend, saying she was going to the toilet. Shin was ready to die, but he wasn't going down without taking Kenji down with him. June wondered if Kenji quarreled with his friends, too. She originally thought she knew their kind very well, but they were being too hard on him, said Yuji. Her friends came there to ask her about Kenji, so Song Jong took his leave. Outside, he sees Kenji's friend, Jong Yun. He goes to sit by him and talk. Jong Yun was getting anxious being next to him. Sun Jun told Jong Yun how Kenji was also having a hard time. Not only him, but the whole school turned their backs on him. Jong Yun understands that, but he still can't accept that he hid that part of his life from him. He felt like he was being deceived all this time. Sun Jun says that he must have his reasons for not telling him. He told Jong Yun that he did live kindly to people. That's why even though they knew he was the son of a gangster, they were still pointing their fingers at him. They weren't really scared of him because they knew he wouldn't hurt them. While Sun Jun was leaving, Jong Yun pointed out that he wasn't scared of them. He said it was because he was good at fighting, unlike losers like him. Sun Jun informed him that he was also scared, but not by Kenji, but by his uncles. He remarked that Jong Yun should know better than anyone that Kenji had a good heart. Jong Yun realized he was short-sighted and misunderstood him. He acted too emotionally and regretted saying all those nasty things to him. He decided to find Kenji, apologize to him, and clear up all the misunderstandings. When he got to the class, his desk, which was beside Kenji's before, was removed by his friends. They didn't want anything to do with him. But June told them that he misunderstood him, and that was doing it to apologize to him. The two freak out over his decision. They asked him why he was the one to apologize when Kenji lied to him for 10 years. He moved his desk back where it was. They warned him that he might get into trouble and wash off their hands with him, too. Some seniors come into their class, and one of them hits Jong Yun for blocking the way. They asked the class where Kenji was, but no one answered them. They were scared to even speak. They noticed that even Shin Jeong and Yi were not there. They leave after insulting the class for being full of losers. Their way got blocked by another student. They were about to curse him, but they made that cursing into a song when they saw it was Song Jong. Sun Jun was surprised when he saw that they didn't do anything in the class. Outside of the school, Shin Jong's friends were afraid of being followed by the gangsters. Their other friends suggested they should go to the police, as they were just minors. But something told them that if they reported to the police, something terrible would happen to them. They looked for Shinji and wondered where he was at a time like this. He was busy luring Sujin into his trap. He called her and asked her to see him. When she saw his face, she asked, "Who did this to you?" He asked her if she knew about Kenji being the young master of a gangster family, to which she replied that she had no idea. He says to himself, what a stupid B-word she was. He started to act emotional, telling her how Kenji brought more than 10 of his uncles and beat him up. Suddenly, there was nothing he could do. He didn't think it would work. She'd never take his side over her childhood friend, whom she had known for so long. But much to his surprise, she was so dumb and head over heels for him that she immediately believed him. She says how she was disappointed in him for doing such a cowardly thing. Shin was surprised that she believed him and thought how dumb she was. He asked her if she knows any of his secrets so that he can get back at him. She tells him that she has no idea about that. Shin started to push her, saying she had to know something, as they were childhood friends. Shin started to get impatient and asked her to give him something like his secret or something he treasured. After thinking about it for a moment, she realized that if they included the people around him, then the person he treasured would be her. Shin had finally an upper hand on Kenji. While people knew that Kenji liked her, she just thought of herself as someone that Kenji treasured. He convinced her to go to his house with him, saying he had forgotten something. She agreed to go with him. On the way, she asked him if they were dating again. He assured her that they were and apologized to her for treating her that way. He promises to treat her better this time if she gives him another chance. She immediately forgets what he did to her and forgives him. After that, Shin Jong hangs out with her and acts lovey-dovey with her. She even skipped school for the first time to hang out with him. Meanwhile, Shin thinks she was the biggest bait for him to catch Kenji with. In the school, Yi's friends were interrogating her, asking if she was dating Kenji, and if she was dating him because he was a gangster. He yells at them, saying she likes him, but not because he is a gangster. They suggest she should make Kenji the strongest. To do that, she could ask his brother for help. He could get him closer to other bullies. He didn't find the thought of him being strong all that bad. In fact, she was totally into it. Just then, the shorty and big head come there, asking them about Kenji. The girls make fun of them for trying to get closer to Kenji after hearing he was a gangster. He thought it might be better to introduce these guys to Kenji before introducing him to his brother's friends, since they were more dangerous. but she wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing. There, they ask if she knows where Xinjiang is and why he isn't coming to school. After he scolds them for asking her about him, they start leaving. When they turn around, they encounter Kenji. The girls told him that he was the one they were looking for. The big head asks if he is the loser who used to get bullied. They didn't believe the girls at first, but they still tried to get along with him. Kenji angrily asks them if they are friends with Xinjiang. They think he's also friends with Shin and start acting friendly with him. The guy brings his hand forward to handshake him. Kenji agreed to handshake him, but started crushing his hand with his monstrous grip. His friend thought he was overreacting, but he informed him he was not and asked him to do something about it. Big Head, who was way stronger than Shorty, attacked him, but Kenji dodged his punch and caught it. Then, he goes on to use the technique of potato twister on him. Kenji informed him that he'd lose his arm if he twisted it even a little more. The guy immediately gives up and begs him to let go of him. He doesn't break his arm and lets him go. The two immediately run from him. As soon as he leaves them, E and her friends were impressed by his charisma. Kenji asked E to do him a favor. Since she was also a bully, he asked her to send a message to all the bullies in the school. He was going to beat all of them up, except her. On the other hand, Shun and Sujin are hanging out. When Sujin asked him if she should ask Kenji directly to stop bullying him, Shin didn't even give it a thought and denied it. Just then he sees Big Head and Shorty running to him. They asked him what happened to his face. As Sujin was about to answer, Shin ordered her to go to the class. While leaving, Sujin admires how cool Shin looked in front of his friends. They told him that it was Kenji who did that to them. At first, Shin thought he asked his uncles for help, but he was surprised to know that not only Shorty but Big Head lost to him too. When they asked about him, he told them that Kenji called tens of his uncles to beat him up. This got the two of them trembling in their shoes. They suggested they shouldn't mess around with him, but Shin proposed a different plan, a plan to screw him up using his connections, like Kenji was using his connections to mess with them. He told them that he was going to ask D.W. Park to help him out because he had connections with gangsters. He informed them how D. Park didn't care about his opponents. He even got into a fight and beat the crap out of a gangster. The two were also on board hearing Dup's name. Shin ordered them to gather as many students as possible, large enough to take on even those gangsters. They were going all in this time, and Shin wasn't playing around. Yeri ordered chocolate milk. Kenji asked her if she liked those as well, but she said those were for him, to which he replied that he hated it. He was only having those because Sujin liked them, but he didn't tell her that. She informed him about the school bullies alliance with their other schools. The top dog of their high school was third-year D.W. Park, who was also Yi's brother. The top fighter was S. Jin Suk, who was in the same club as Dup Park, but as his junior, and they both are close to each other. Since S. Jun Suk wasn't a bully, their other bully would stick to D. Park. Shin and Dup Park went to the same middle school, so they were close to each other. In fact, the reason Shin became a leader was because of her older brother, not because he was good at fighting. She further goes on to tell him how the alliance had about 100 members, but Kenji told her that he was only concerned with their school at the moment. He was determined to beat them all to become the baldest person of all. The student council president asks Dupak if he already knew about Kenji being the son of a gangster. Dupak had already told him to keep an eye on Kenji, saying he was the son of the fire bag gangster, but seeing Kenji, he didn't believe him at the time. He reminded him how the other schools were always fighting, but their school never got into trouble. The president thought it was because he was the president, but Dup Park burst his bubbles, informing him it was because of Kenji that no one dared to mess with their school. On the other hand, Shorty and Bige Head were gathering all of the guns of their school. Meanwhile, Shin goes to talk to Dup Park about the situation. When Dup Park saw the bruise on his face, he was furious. He asked him who did that. Shin told him the whole story about what happened. He explained how S. Jun was also helping Kenji, besides the gangsters. Shin asked for his help in getting back at Kenji. Dup Park told him that his biggest problem was S. Jong. Dup Park assured that he would cover for him on the gangster's end. He said that he should just focus on getting rid of S. Jong. Shin started flattering him, saying how great he was and how he unified all the schools in their area. But Shin pointed out how he and S. Jing were in the same judo club, to which Dup Park replies that he was more important to him than S. Young, since he was with him since middle school. Dup Park made a plan to take care of S. Jun for Shin. He told Shin to challenge him in a one-on-one fight and take him to the gymnasium. But Shin was nowhere near strong enough to take down Song Jong. Dup Park knew this, even though he wasn't confident that he could take Song Jong on in a one-on-one fight. That's why they planned an ambush. No matter how strong S. Jing was, even he wouldn't be able to survive an ambush. Dup Park told him to gather as many friends as he could because he was going to ambush him the next day. Shin couldn't help but laugh at how he was going to get rid of S-Jun. Finally, all of Shin's friends were gathered in one place. They were getting impatient because Shin was late. He entered the room and gave them the good news they wanted to hear for a long time. All of them had piled up anger and frustration towards Song Jong. After listening that he was planning to beat up Song Jong, their others think he had gone crazy. They were also scared of S-Jong. But when Shin told them that Dup Park was also helping them, they started to believe that it was not impossible. They wanted to beat him for a long time, but no one dared to touch him. But now they had a chance to get back at him. While walking in the school hallway, he was worried that Kenji might fight his brother too. He was determined to get rid of all the bullies. Just then, they see Jong Yun waiting for them. Kenji was surprised to see him. He heads out ahead to let them talk it out. They awkwardly walk together and sit on the bench outside. Jun told him how he was disappointed in him. Kenji apologized to him again for being a gangster. But Jun wasn't upset about that. He was upset that Kenji hid it from him for 10 years. He felt betrayed and thought he was the only one who considered him his best friend. Kenji asked him why he couldn't tell him all these years. He knew how much Jun hated gangsters. Kenji was afraid of losing his best friend if he told him the truth about being a gangster. Jun was relieved to hear that, because he thought Kenji had changed. Kenji pointed out Jun smiling, meaning they were all right now. They started hitting each other like kids. Jin was watching it all from the class. He was happy for Kenji and went back to sleep again during the class. The dumb friend was surprised to see Jun and Kenji together. The guy was angry at Kenji and tried to convince the dumb friend, saying Kenji was trash, and so was Jun. But the dumb friend wanted to be friends with him again. After school, Kenji invited Jun to his house to introduce him to his uncles. Jun was ready to meet his gangster uncles. Son Jun and E also tagged along. Sujun was not very happy to see them hanging out together. The dumb friend also asked if he could tag along as well, and Kenji agreed immediately. When they all arrived at Kenji's house, the first uncle greeted them. The first uncle was happy to see him with that many friends. But he told him that he'd have to delay this gathering for later, as he was going to receive special training. From now on, he wouldn't be able to go to school as well. Sun Young and the others wished him luck and left. Kenji pointed out their injury on his first uncle's face and asked him who was capable of doing that. He informed him that there were a few people in Korea capable of that. After they left, we see Shin's sidekicks hiding. They were following them and got the news of Kenji not coming to school. This would mean that the gangsters would also not come to the school, meaning they could take down Sun Jun with much ease now. But for now, they just follow Sun Jun to find out where he lives. The next day, Sun Jun was surprised at how quiet the school was just because Kenji didn't come that day. He set up his desk and started sleeping right after coming into the class. Meanwhile, Shin got the report from his sidekicks. They had already gathered everyone to the gym. Now, all they needed was to make Sun Jin come to the gym. He went to Sun Jong's class and started walking toward him. E and her friends were wondering why he was walking up to sleeping Sun Jong. Just then, Shin raised his hands and slapped Sun Young as hard as he could. This shocked everyone in the class. Song Jun woke up angry. Shin started running, seeing him awake. He yelled at him to come to the gym, otherwise he'd think Song Jun got scared and ran away. Song Jun was confused at what just happened. Shin was just one step away from beating him up. He was planning to lure him to the gym and humiliate him in front of everyone. Dup Park had assured him that he would be waiting for them in the gym with the Super Alliance. They would get rid of Song Jun once and for all. After that, Kenji would be an easy target without Song Jun. Shin entered the gym and saw that his friends were already there. Not only them, but the Super Alliance executives were also there. Dup Park winked at him, indicating he had his back. Not everything was in position. All they needed to do now was wait for Song Jun. One of their executives expressed his disappointment. Dup Park had promised them that the Fire Bear Gang's young master would be there. Dup Park replied that it was normal for the main character to arrive in the end. The other executives were wondering if the hierarchy of Yuron High was going to change that day. In the classroom, we see Song Jun get up in anger. He suggested he should just ignore Shin. But Song Jun replied that he didn't feel like it and left the class. He arrived at the gym. When he entered, he found Shin standing in front of him. Shin said to him that he was going to die that day. Dup Park informed the Super Alliance that the guy was Song Jun. He was talking about how it was a pity that he wasn't interested in joining their alliance. They were shocked to see his size. Shin's friends were also scared to see him. Shin, with a menacing smile on his face, ordered his lackeys to screw him up. But no one dared to move even an inch. Shin was confused and asked them what was going on and where his other two friends were. He started sweating and didn't know what was going on. When Song Joon started to move closer to him, Shin started freaking out. He told him to stay back, but Song Joon attacked him. He punched him so hard that he was thrown away by his friends. The Super Alliance executives were stunned to see his power and wondered if he was just a high schooler. They were impressed by him. Meanwhile, Shin shouted that his nose was broken. He asked his guys why they were just standing there not doing anything, but no one said anything. Shin asked Dup Park for help. He asked him to give him a signal to move. Dup Park just sat there, smiling, and signaled the guys to come out. The door opens. Shin turns back to see who came out. It was Kenji. Everyone was surprised to see Kenji, but no one was more surprised than Shin. He started panicking. He asked everyone why Kenji was there and where his two lackeys were. He asked Dup Park what was going on. Kenji asked Shin if he was scared to fight him. Shin smiled, calling him a coward who brought his gangster uncles to ambush him. Kenji replied that Shin was doing the same thing, trying to ambush Sun Jun. Kenji challenged him to a one-on-one fight. Shin attacked him, yelling that he was just a loser. But Kenji easily avoided his attack. He used his pickaxe technique. Shin had to back down. The pain was unbearable. Shin couldn't stand how carefree Kenji was. He attacked Kenji with his left hand this time. But Kenji dodged his punch without much effort, calling him slow. Kenji grabbed Shin's hand, using his monstrous grip strength. Shin tried his best to get free. Kenji used another technique, laundry squeeze, and elbowed him. Shin screamed in pain. He complimented Kenji's techniques. The seniors were also impressed by his fighting style. Shin started making excuses, saying he was already injured from fighting S-Jing. It would be impossible for him to fight again. Kenji said he was full of words. Seeing Kenji look down on him, Shin decided to take out his knife. He was planning to use it on S-Jong, but now he had to use it on Kenji. Kenji said that using a knife was going too far. Seeing Kenji get scared, Shin charged toward him. But before he could hit him, the second uncle announced on the mic that using a knife in a one-on-one fight was prohibited. Shin was shocked to see the second uncle there. He wondered what he was doing there. His two lackeys were also there, sitting with their heads shaved. The second uncle ordered him to throw the knife and start fighting again. Shin told the second uncle that he was already injured. It wasn't a fair fight. Then he saw the two guys sitting beside the second uncle. At first, he wondered who those ugly guys were. Then he realized they were his lackeys. He remembers how his second uncle had warned him not to use any tricks. Kenji asked Sujuin to hit him, just like he did Shin. That way, they'd be on the same level. Shin wouldn't have any more excuses not to fight him. Sujuin is hesitant at first, but when Kenji insists, he hits him with a solid punch to the face. The second uncle and the others were baffled to see that. Seeing his madness, Shin felt shivers down his spine. The seniors concluded that he was much more suited to become the boss of the school. When Shin doesn't attack him, Kenji charges instead. Shin thought he just needed to keep his distance from him. But much to his surprise, Kenji jumped onto him, not giving him any chance to escape. The second uncle was also surprised because he didn't teach him any ground technique. Even though Kenji managed to grab him, he didn't know what to do next. So he just started to squeeze his wrist. The others were slightly disappointed in him, but they didn't understand why Shin was acting like he was being strangled. Kenji remembers all the devious things Shin had done to him, and how, because of him, Sujuin left him as she was in a bad boys now. Shin screams in pain and tells him that he gives up, but it was too late. Kenji couldn't stop himself now. He starts punching him again and again, asking him how it feels to be powerless. But instead of begging him, Shin calls him a loser, who would be worthless without the backing of the gangsters. The gym echoes with the sound of his punches. He was hitting him for all the people Shin bullied, and they couldn't do anything about it. Sujuin stops Kenji, as Shin is already out of consciousness. Kenji couldn't contain his anger and screamed out loud while crying. The seniors make fun of him for crying, even though he was the one hitting Shin. Shin's friends realized that they were no match for him. They start arguing about who should be the new boss of the school after Shin. While they were arguing with each other, Kenji informed them that it was pointless for them to fight among themselves, as he was going to beat all of them from now on anyway. They told him that he was being full of himself just after winning one fight. But one of the Super Alliance executives intervenes and introduces himself to him. But Kenji disrespects him, saying he didn't like those guys. The executives were getting angry. Kenji goes on to say that he was going to beat the Super Alliance as well. Outside the gym, the first and the third uncle were waiting. The third uncle asked him about his injury. The first uncle told him how the other factions in the gang had started to make their move. They have gotten wind of Kenji's existence. They'd have to let the public know of his existence as well. if they wanted to survive. At this point, inside the gym, the Super Alliance executive warns him that he won't be able to walk out alive after saying such a thing about the Alliance. But Kenji didn't care about anything. The guy challenges Kenji to a fight, and Kenji immediately agrees to it. The second uncle signals Dup Park, and he stops them from fighting. Dup Park told them that Kenji was high on adrenaline. Everything he says would sound aggressive at this point in time. The guy agrees to leave for now after Dup Park insists. The other seniors didn't like his rude behavior towards the Alliance as well, but they didn't cause any more drama and left. The guys from their high school couldn't accept Kenji as their new boss and retaliated. Dup Park told them, if you didn't like it, you'd have to face Jung and himself. Even though they were furious, none of them dared to move forward and left in anger. They were frustrated after the one they thought of as a loser humiliated them, and now would be their boss. But one of the guys, named Kim Young, told them the one who got humiliated the most was Shin. They'd have to just wait for the moment, and their time would definitely come. After everyone leaves, Sun Young asks Kenji if he's feeling all right. I thought I'd feel good after beating Shinjong up with my own hands. Kenji said, I thought I'd feel relieved, but it was way different from what he had imagined. When he was beating up someone who wasn't able to defend himself, he felt like a bad person. Young reminded him that he wasn't just someone. It was Shin, and he deserved it. Isn't that what you wanted to become, a bad person? Said Songjong. Songjong advised him to decide in which direction he wanted to go. In the gym, the second uncle was taking Dup Park to the first uncle to introduce him to the first uncle. But before going, he takes out his trimmer to shave Shin's remaining hair. While Dup Park was wondering how he was going to save his hair when it was already shaved. In a few moments, the second uncle was done and left. After that, we see Shin lying on the ground with all the hairs on his body being shaved. After they were gone, Shin's friends ran to him to wake him up. When he wakes up, he finds his clothes and wonders why his body is so smooth. When he realized what they had done to him, he screamed his heart out. He was the only one kept in the dark. They were all in on it together. The friends that he trusted parked up, someone whom he trusted and followed around as if he was his real brother, the Super Alliance as well. They all planned and made him the prey. He starts laughing like a maniac. His friends were wondering if he had gone insane. It worked out great, he says, because now he knew who the people he needed to get rid of. He ordered his lackey to get to work, as he was going to take his revenge on everybody. He is the type of person where, if he dies, doesn't go down alone. At this point, Shin was the most dangerous because he had nothing to lose anymore, and he was going to make them realize what it's like to lose everything. The Super Alliance executives wondered which side to choose. Kenji had declared war on them, and Dup Park was backing him. News of Kenji defeating Shin spread like wildfire, but his declaration of war spread even faster. The news also reached the Fire Bear Gang. The uncle threw a party to celebrate this victory and introduced Dup Park to the family. At school, some students feared Kenji. Others couldn't accept him as the new boss and began to gather. They all unanimously hated Kenji. Kenji sat on a bench thinking. He believed he had become bad enough for Sujin to like him. He planned to confess his feelings. He called her, but she didn't answer. She always picked up before, so he worried something was wrong. He urgently wanted to show her how bad he had become. He had started leaving school during class hours. The real man's work no longer felt awkward. He was getting used to spitting. He was embracing the gangster lifestyle. When he got home, he was surprised to find it empty. As he looked for his family, his father greeted him. Kenji was stunned to see his father so soon. His father hugged him, expressing his pride. He started crying, saying he had waited his whole life for this moment. It was the first time in 10 years his father had hugged him. Kenji was relieved, despite his mixed feelings about the situation. The party started, and his father offered him a drink he had prepared himself. They were both excited for this moment, but Kenji said the drink was disgusting. His father was disappointed. To please him, Kenji tried to force himself to drink, but his father stopped him, saying he had already done enough. The boss went outside for some air. The second uncle followed. The boss thanked the first uncle for taking care of his son. Just then, Manly San, the Fire Bear Gang's right-hand man, arrived looking for the boss. The boss said he was staying inside and went back in. San confronted the first uncle, asking if he had recovered from the slap. He further insulted him, calling him just a babysitter. The first uncle only stared, saying nothing. He went inside, which further annoyed San. The boss sensed tension between the two and ordered the second uncle to reconcile with San. The boss then asked the second uncle to send Kenji to the rooftop alone. When Kenji arrived on the roof, the boss expressed his concern. He worried that Kenji might revert to being kind, and he needed to prevent that. Kenji was shocked to see all of his award certificates. His father ordered him to burn all of them. Kenji was baffled to hear that. Kenji knew that this was his past, and he needed to leave it behind. But even then, these were evidence of the kind acts he performed for the last 10 years. He burns all of them down and puts his past behind him. His father was proud of him and was extremely happy. After his father was gone, Kenji mustered up the courage to call Sujin again. He wanted to tell her how he was not the same person now. But before he could call her, she called him instead. Kenji started to panic and didn't know what to do. But then he realized the one who was calling him was not Sujin, but he. He thought if she was calling this late at night, it must be something urgent. But he just wanted to have a cordial conversation with him. As Kenji was about to hang up the phone, she said she had something urgent to tell him. She was coming over to his house. But Kenji asked her to meet at the park nearby. He wasn't going to listen to him. She was already on her way. Kenji tries to sneak out of the house, but his second uncle catches him. He asks him if he's going to meet a girl. When Kenji says yes, the other uncles also wake up and start asking him all sorts of questions. So Kenji just runs away without taking any of them with him. When he got outside, he found he was already waiting for him to pick him up. But Kenji scolds her, thinking she stole someone else's motorbike and didn't even have a driving license. He assured him that it was her bike and offered him a ride to the park. But Kenji proposes they should just walk to the park. He was slightly disappointed. They arrive at the park, where he reminded him how it was the same park where they first met. She reminds him how he threw a stone at her that day. They remember what had happened that day and laugh together. Kenji puts his hands on her forehead to see if the stone left any scar. But he got flustered and started blushing. She got up without saying anything and started her motorbike as soon as possible. Kenji apologizes to her for anything he might have done that offended her and asked her not to leave. But she didn't listen to him. If she had not left when she did, Kenji might have heard her heart beating so fast. On the other hand, Shin had started to gather students for his revenge. Shorty and Big Head call him crazy for going before them again and leave. But some students couldn't accept the humiliation and wanted to do something about it. They had a total of 6 people now, but the others weren't confident that they could take on Song Jun, even though there were 6 of them. So they asked Shin if he had any plans in mind. Shin points out how they had more weaknesses and how they had much more to lose. We see Song Jun and his little sister enjoying her food and playing. The next day, at school, Kenji was worried. He wasn't picking up his phone, and the same was with Sujin. He encountered the student council president on the way. The president takes him aside to tell him something important. He tells Kenji how the chief teacher wanted him gone and was proposing to the principal to transfer him. Kenji was confused because he hadn't even done anything to warrant that. The reason was simply him being the son of a gangster. But the president understands that it wasn't his fault that he was born into a gangster family. On the contrary, he admires him for turning out the way he did, even though his surroundings made it difficult. That's why he advised Kenji to be the face of the school violence eradication campaign. That way, he could stop the bullies without getting in trouble with the teachers. Kenji had no reason to decline the proposal, so he goes along with it. They both go to meet the chief teacher in the teacher's office. The student council president told the chief teacher how he could get rid of all the bullies with Kenji's help if he let him be the face of the school violence committee. The teacher found this to be an absurd idea, but Kenji asked him to trust him because he'd never done anything wrong. And if he didn't believe him, he should call a parent-teacher meeting. Everyone in the office was surprised to hear it. The chief teacher was put on the spot and couldn't dismiss them without a good reason. He told them he'd think about it. In class, Kenji was wondering if he'd be considered a kind person for stopping the bullies or if he'd become an even worse person. Sujin was not in the class as well, which made him even more anxious, thinking she was in some kind of trouble. After school, Kenji and Song Jun went together, and Shin and his lackeys followed them. After a while, they realized that they were not heading towards Kenji's house, meaning they were headed towards Song Jun's house. Shin was thrilled after realizing that. They arrived at Song Jun's house, where her sister was waiting for him. Kenji was surprised to see her calling Song Jun her big brother. The sister revealed how he asked her big brother to keep it a secret from him. And she was also the one who asked Song Jun to help Kenji, as Kenji had saved her once from some bullies. That's why Song Jun was more involved in his matter. They both thanked Kenji for helping her and complimented him. After they explained everything to him, they left for the gym to train. Meanwhile, Shin was watching from the shadows. His eyes were on his sister. "Laugh while you can," he says, "because I'll be looking forward to what their expression will be like when they lose what's precious to them." While going to the gym, Sunjun explains how coming home after doing lower body exercises to the point where he can't even move gives him a thrill. After Sunjun was gone for training, Kenji couldn't resist but started to worry about Sujin again. He tried to call her again, but this time as well, she didn't pick up. He didn't know if he should report this to the police or search for himself. When he got home, Kenji asked his second uncle for help. The second asked him if she had a boyfriend. They told him that both of them must be doing that. That's why they weren't picking up. Kenji couldn't hear them talking about both of them like that and ran away from them. Even though he was terrified of confronting what he might find them doing at her house, he still decided to go look for her at her house. But even at her house, there was no one. He wondered if she went to her father's place. But he was confident she would never do that, not without telling him. He was feeling down. Seeing her like that, her friend asked her what happened with Kenji and her. "I don't think Kenji is interested in me," said Yer, because he wasn't playing hard to get around her. While they were planning their next move, Kenji called her. Surprised, she picks up the phone. Kenji starts by saying he has something to tell her. She was flattered and asked him what he wanted to say, but he was just calling her to borrow her bike. He told her how he was going to search for Sujin. Yer reminds him that she has a boyfriend and that he should look for her, not him. Kenji listened to her advice and hung up the call. Yeri was really annoyed. Even though Kenji listened to her, he still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. On the way home, he meets with Dun, Sun Jun's sister again. She bought him ice cream from her allowance. We see Shale, who was happy to find Kenji there too, creeping on them. He was going to beat Kenji and Dun after kidnapping her, but not everyone was on board with this plan. They were happy to beat Kenji, but beating a kid was going too far, even for them. But one of the guys agrees with Shin and calls them weak for backing down. He reminds them that the reason they were playing this dirty was because they couldn't get their hands on Songjun. But those guys would rather be called than beat up a child. Shin was getting frustrated and wished that Sun Young gets crippled somehow so that they could just directly ambush him. And his prayers were heard. Sun Jun was coming back from the gym after doing some extensive lower body exercises to the point that he started limping and couldn't even work properly. This was their 1 in a million chance. It was like God was on their side. Everyone was on board with this. They pick up their bats and march ahead. While Kenji and Dune were playing in a park, Sujuin started climbing the stairs. He was enjoying the thrill when Shin attacked him from behind. He managed to block the first attack but realized he had no strength in his leg. So, he couldn't dodge the second one. The rest of them attacked him as well and brought him to his knees. Sujuin counted. There were 6 of them, but he was still confident that he could take them on. He started throwing hands and taking them down one by one. He could see their moves flying away. He blocked one of the guy's attacks and asked him if they had done anything to Dune. But the guy didn't know if he was talking about a person or detergent powder. Sujuin deduces that she is safe and is relieved for a moment when Shin attacks him from behind. He was on his knees again and almost got knocked out. Then they beat him until he was unconscious. Kenji and Dune got back from the park. When they got there, they saw Sujuin getting kidnapped. Dune was terrified. Kenji yells at Shin to stop, but he gives him the middle finger and leaves in his van. Dune couldn't stop crying, but Kenji promised her that he would bring him back safely. Kenji was holding his anger back for the sake of Dune, but he was fuming with anger and wanted to crush Shin once and for all. He gets Dune to safety and goes home to ask his uncles for help, but they were all drunk and asleep. He thinks of getting the police for help, but as he was about to make a call, he got a call from Sujuin. He immediately picked up the phone, but on the other side of the phone was none other than Shin. We see that he has Sujin as a hostage. Shin threatened Kenji not to bring his uncles or the police. Otherwise, he'd hurt Sujin pretty badly. All the while, Sujin just sat there without saying anything. Kenji couldn't believe how Shin was playing. He was furious and just wanted to beat the crap out of him. And he was going to do that alone. So, he decided to go there on his own without his uncles or the police. When Kenji got out of the house, he saw Yi waiting for him. She was there to give him a ride. But he didn't want her to come along, as it was dangerous for her there. She didn't understand what he was talking about. Kenji told her everything that was going on. Hearing that, he gets very angry and curses Shin. But even after hearing all that, she insisted on giving him a ride there. Kenji made her promise that she'd return after leaving him there. They both get on the bike, and he asked him to hold on to her waist, otherwise he'll fall. But Kenji just held on to her shirt, which annoyed Yi a little. Soon, they arrive at the abandoned factory where Shin was holding them. He told Yi to go back, saying either he or Shin would walk out of there alive. But he knew that there was no way Shin would be alone and fight him fairly. Inside the factory, the thugs were afraid that Kenji might bring his uncles. But Shin assured them he wouldn't make such a mistake. He isn't that dumb. Then, he goes up to Sun Jun and asks him, "Did you think he'd even come?" While hitting him, Shin starts slapping him brutally, to the point Sun Jun starts bleeding, while Shin laughs like a maniac. But Sun Jun is still gazing at him, which makes him even more angry. He starts hitting him even more brutally. Sujin sees this and asks him, "Are you going to do the same with Kenji?" He looked at her in anger and assured her, "I'd do even worse with him, and if you talk one more time, I'll do the same with you too." She apologized to him and stayed silent. She thinks to herself how she doesn't like bad boys anymore and begs Kenji to come and save her. Shin informs him that she is just bait for Kenji and calls her the B-word. But the others were still not sure that Kenji wouldn't bring his uncle. Shin assured them, saying he had thought of it too. We see a gangster waiting in a van outside. Just then, Kenji arrives there. He was fuming with anger. Shin asked him, "Did you bring your gangster?" To which Kenji replied, "Why would I bring my uncles when I am a gangster myself?" Shin makes fun of him for bluffing and trying to act tough. Sujin calls for him, thinking to herself how he was there to save her. Kenji was surprised to see her there too. Shin told him, "It was hard for us to capture Sun Jun, but even if he was strong, he still couldn't win against a group." Then, he orders his lackey to attack while smiling menacingly. One of them says, "We didn't need to attack him all at once, so you're the same loser, Kenji, after all." He attacked him on his own, but Kenji dodges his attack and uses his momentum against him by kneeling to his face. The guy was out in just one move. Kenji then told them, "Release them, otherwise I'll tear the guy's hair off his scalp." But even after he tore off his hair, none of them reacted. Kenji says, "I shouldn't expect trash like you to care about their friend." Kenji threatens to take on all of them. Shin mocks him for saying such nonsense. Kenji knew it would be hard for him to win against them. His only hope of winning was if he managed to free Sun Jun. Kenji attacked Shin, but he dodged his attack and landed a powerful hit on him. He told Kenji, "I was holding back last time because of your bald uncle." But Kenji was aiming to grab him, so he couldn't run. Shin thought he was going to use his technique again, but Kenji just simply started punching him again and again. Seeing Shin getting beat up, one of them attacks Kenji with a club. But Kenji ate that without flinching. One more of them kicks him, but Kenji grabs his leg, uses one of his techniques, and bites his leg. We see that he was still there, and she was impressed at how well Kenji fought. Just then, she sees S-Jun tied up. S-Jun signals her to make her move now, while they are distracted. While they are busy fighting Kenji, she sneaks behind them and starts to untie him. Just then, Sujin sees her helping him and yells at her to help her as well. Shin and the others notice he helping him. Kenji warned him to look out, but it was already too late. Shin got to her first and hit her with a club. She passes out immediately. While Kenji was distracted, the other bullies started hitting him brutally. They beat him to the point he was about to pass out. Sujin starts crying, seeing Kenji getting beaten up, while Shin laughs at the mess he had made. He orders his lackeys to hold Kenji as he is about to play ball with his head. Kenji braces himself for the attack, but the attack doesn't come. We see that S-Jun was holding the club, he wasn't tied. Shin looks up to see why he can't move when a punch comes flying towards him. While the others were freezing after seeing S-Jun free, Kenji managed to get them off of him. S-Jun told Kenji to take care of E and Sujin, while he held them back. Kenji goes to save her. She apologizes to him and asks him to help her stand up, as her legs are numb. She falls on top of him, which makes E furious. Kenji asked her to help E, to which she replies that her legs were numb, but she agrees to it half-heartedly. But E refuses to get help from her and tells her not to touch her. Kenji goes to help S-Jun. S-Jun informed Kenji that he'd be at a disadvantage because they had weapons, but Kenji was determined to crush all of them and was ready. S-Jun reminded him that he was way stronger than them all. All they needed to do now was to take them out one by one. Kenji was on the same page. Shin gets furious at their cockiness, and all of them attack them. Sujin was taking them down one by one. One of them attacked them with a club from behind, but S-Jun ate it like it was nothing, and the club broke instead. The guy knew he had messed up, but it was too late. S-Jun took down two of them in an instant, but his legs were still not working properly. That's why he couldn't move properly. Shin already knew S-Jun was way too strong. That's why he attacked Kenji, but Kenji was not a pushover anymore. He dodges the attack and grabs him by the collar. Then he proceeds to lift him with just one hand and slams his head on the ground. The thugs realize Kenji is on the same level as S-Jun. Kenji felt a burning feeling in his arm. This was the same feeling he used to feel every night. He folded his shirt and showed his monstrous arm. One of them attacked him thinking he was just bluffing, but Kenji caught his punch and crushed it with his grip. Another one of them tries to attack him, but Jun takes care of him. They were terrified, having no choice left. Shin calls the gangster, waiting outside. The rest of them try to buy time until then. They attack all at once, but they split in the midway. Most of them go towards Jun. Kenji warns him, but Jun can't move. All of them gang up on him and start beating him. Kenji tries to help him, but Shin reminds him he is his opponent. He strips his clothes so that Kenji can't use his grip to hold him. Jun calms himself down and starts taking them down one by one. He takes two of them down, but as he was about to attack the third one of the guys attacked his legs, which made him miss the target. They realize it is his weak point and start attacking his legs alone. Kenji was worried about him, but Shin punched him and told him he was the one he should be worried about. Shin was just buying time at this point. Outside the factory, the gangster guy gets out of the car. He was angry at them for calling him and was heading inside. He remarks how he would have never agreed to it if it wasn't for San, who asked him. We see it was Lee San, the Fire Bear Gang boss's right-hand man, who was the one who gave him this mission. Inside the factory, Kenji was still fighting Shin, but Shin was holding his own pretty well against him. Kenji wanted to take care of Shin and helps Jun, but he sees that Songjun has already taken care of all of them. Shin is terrified after seeing that and runs to call the gangster again. But Kenji hits him in the face while he is distracted. Shin had enough, and he brings out the knife he was saving for Kenji. Songjun tries to help him, but he can't get up. Just then, he sees the gangster guy and wonders if he is one of Kenji's uncles. But soon, he realizes the guy was there to beat him up. He wants Kenji to look out, but it is already too late. The guy manages to land a clean hit on him. Song tries to help him, but falls on his knees. Shin threatened to take out his eyes if he tried to get up again. The guy was disappointed at how weak Kenji was. He was originally planning to change sides, but seeing how weak he was, he changed his mind and decided to cut off the route there. Kenji blocks his attack, but even after blocking, he can feel the power. The guy attacked him again, and this time Kenji grabbed his fist and used his potato crush technique. But this didn't work on him. Kenji realizes the guy is on another level. He thinks about the training the second uncle had taught him, a technique that he could use if he runs into someone stronger and bigger than him. This trick was only exclusive to him because of his monstrous grip. In the present, Kenji got up and jumped in the air. He wrapped himself around the guy and used his double axe technique. He started attacking his collarbone with his axe skill. The guy couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground. As Kenji was about to land his final hit, the guy grabbed his hand and tossed him while laughing at him. Kenji was surprised, but Songjun knew taking on a gangster was impossible from the start. As the second round was about to begin, they heard a police siren. The guy didn't want to deal with the police, so he ran away. Just then, the first and second uncle arrived with the police. The first uncle was furious and determined to kill whoever tried to lay their hand on the Fire Bear Gang successor, while the gangster tried to run away. Kenji chased him down, but the guy pushed him and ran into the van. On the other hand, one of the thugs came crawling back outside. When he saw the first uncle, he thought he was a police officer and asked him for help. But the second uncle recognized him and dragged him out to the cops. When he went inside, worried about Kenji, he saw all the thugs on the ground and Songjun handling them. Shin also thought he was a cop and tried to play the victim, but he soon realized who he was. Songjun told him Kenji ran after one gangster. Hearing this, the first uncle was shocked, thinking other gangs had started to make their move. Just then, Kenji came there. The first uncle was relieved to see him and asked him if the gangster got to his face. Kenji assured him that he was fine, and the one who did that to him was Shin. The first uncle ordered Songjun to move out of the way and hit Shin so hard that he went flying. The others saw him and tried to pretend as if they were unconscious. But the first uncle threatened to beat the crap out of them if they kept pretending. They immediately got up and he dragged them out of there. They handed the thugs over to the cops and told them that they were the attackers. But someone named Detective Kim told the cops not to take a gangster's word for it. But when he saw Kenji, he immediately recognized him, asking him if they did that to him. When Kenji confirmed the accusation, Detective Kim didn't listen to anyone and took all of them with him and ordered the second uncle to come to the police station with him. The second uncle assured Kenji that he'd take care of it and kill the guy who attacked him. After they were gone, Songjun left for home as Dun was worried sick for him. The third uncle also came there yelling to kill whoever did that to him. But the second uncle told him that everything was already over. Kenji wondered if Yuji and Sujin were at the hospital. But they were still here because Sujin was too scared to ride with her. Kenji was showing his concern for E and advising her to go see a doctor. Sujin threw herself on top of him. "Hug me back. I'm scared," she pleaded. She kept saying how she hated bad boys. E, now annoyed, scoffed. "Let's go to work," Sujin suggested. "This area is close to our old neighborhood. Can you be okay alone for 10 minutes? She asked E. He clapped back. "I'm scared too. We should go together." Kenji reminisced walking around the neighborhood. He pointed out all the places where they used to play as kids. "Does your father still live here?" he asked. "I'm not in contact with him," she replied. He was pushed to see them together, but curiosity about Kenji's childhood home piqued her interest. Sujin showed him the spot under the bridge. "I used to cry here," she said, "and you would comfort me." That was when Kenji decided to become Sujin's ideal guy. He remembered how many things happened after that. He thought back to her words, "I like kind, sweet people and I hate bad people." But ever since she suddenly said she liked bad people, he had been struggling to live that way. He went around acting like a bully, picking on people weaker than him. He even accepted the grueling firebear training. He had become pretty bad. She grabbed his hand and took him to their old hiding place. Sujin remarked, "I never thought you were against my family." She continued, "I thought your uncles just looked tough. I never imagined you to be a gangster. You were always so kind and righteous," she added. Kenji thought to himself, "For 10 years, I did all that for her." Sujin said, "I don't like bad people like your father, Shin, anymore. I'm never going to date someone bad," she declared. "I want someone kind like you, Kenji." Hearing this, Kenji was in disbelief. It took him so long to become bad. He could no longer go back to being kind. He was now the Firebear Gang's successor. Seeing him deep in thought, she asked, "Are you okay?" "Not really," he replied. He was exhausted trying to be her type of guy. He just watched the stars, thinking about how he had liked her for 10 years. How he worked so hard for her. All of this had changed him a lot. She leaned off his shoulder, urging him, "Talk to me if something's bothering you. I'm the only one you have. You can rely on me." This makes Kenji think about all the people whom he had gotten close to. All of his uncles who cared so much for him. His second uncle, who'd do anything for him. The first uncle, who'd kill anyone who dared to lay a hand on him. E, who'd been supportive of him all this time. His school buddies. Sujin, her little sister, and most of all his father, who was now proud of him. It was not true anymore. He now had a lot of people on his side, and he's the Firebear Gang's successor. It's not just any gang, it's the Firebear Gang. She remembers how, after the recent incident, Kenji was a pretty good catch. She says that she likes him now and asks him how he feels about her. This was the moment he had been waiting for, 10 long years. And now that it was here, he was hesitating. She started pushing him, saying how she must dig up the courage to confess and that he should do the same. But Kenji just sits there without uttering a word. She says how he was too kind to say no to her and was too kind for his own good. She gave him time to think about it and asked him to give his answer later. She proposes they should get back to the others, and Kenji immediately agrees to that. Seeing how quickly he got up, she worryingly asked him, "How could you get up so immediately?" She asked him if he was the same Kenji. Kenji told her he needed time to think about it and ask others. Sujin found it impossible. The Kenji she knew would never turn his back on her as he was doing right now. And that's when she realized that he was never going to come back to her. She yelled his name and asked him if he hated her because she kept doing annoying things or because she dated Shin. She starts apologizing to him. She even says that she was going to change for him. But Kenji doesn't stop and keeps walking. She starts getting desperate and asks him if he's going to date E. "If that's the case, I'm going to be much better than her," she states. She says how she was going to put in a lot of effort to become someone he likes. Kenji stops after hearing this and advises her not to do that, because he finds that to be very hard. He says this with teary eyes. Sujin was stunned to hear that and was left speechless. Sujin remembers the time when they, few kids, were teasing and mocking her for not having a mother and how her father beats her. She requests them to stop calling her, though while crying. Just then, Kenji comes there to save her from them. He is a fearful kid with an angry look. The kid mars him as well for not having a mother. So Kenji just pinches him, but the guy still wasn't stopping. As Kenji is about to hit him again, Sujin asked him to stop, saying hitting others is bad. After they ran away, Sujin thanked him for helping her, to which he replied that there was no need, as he just didn't like them saying out loud that she didn't have a mother. She remarks how he was so kind. Kenji freaks out, saying he was not, and that his dream was to become a gangster. Just then, Sujin's drunk dad calls for her, cursing at her. Before going back, she says to him, "It wasn't our fault that we didn't have a mother, so you should cheer up." Sujin thinks to herself how Kenji was her only childhood friend in Hest and loneliest times. In fact, he was more than just a friend. She liked him more than her father, who used to hit her, more than her mother, who abandoned her. He was a reliable friend who was always on her side throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school. We see how even her classmates started saying they looked good together. But they also inform her that if they get into a relationship and then break up, things will become awkward between them. She'd be just losing a friend. Sujin hadn't thought of that. She couldn't lose Kenji, as she wouldn't have anyone else left on her side. She couldn't afford to lose him. She would become alone in the world. Kenji had to be on her side. Kenji understood her no matter what she did. He was like a family to her. He was her precious friend, but now that precious friend was going far from her, and she couldn't do anything about it. She wanted to stop him and tell him that she couldn't lose him, and asked him not to abandon her, but she couldn't utter the words. Kenji left her. Kenji goes to E and apologizes to her for making her wait so long. She overheard the conversation and asked him if he was okay, to which he replies he was okay while holding back his tears. He proposes they should get out of here quickly. Kenji expresses his concern for Sujin, but he assures him that they'll pick her up in the car. She told him again to hold on to her waist as they were about to leave. She thought it would be the same as the last time, but much to her surprise, this time he held on to her, making her blush. He thanks her for doing all this for him, but she says that there is nothing to thank her for and accelerates the scooter in excitement. On the way, Kenji wondered if Sujin was going to be okay. They arrive at the location where the third uncle is waiting for them in a car. Kenji asked him to pick up Sujin before going to the police station. Kenji tried to call her, but he couldn't reach her. When they arrived there, she wasn't there. Kenji tried to call her again, but to no avail. At the police station, when the officer asked them to confirm if they were the attackers, Shin told them that they were the victims, not the attackers. But Detective Kim wasn't having it and threatened to call their parents. The other thugs suggest that it was just school violence and that they should not involve their parents. They do voluntary work as well, but Detective Kim burst their bubbles, informing them that this would be treated as a criminal case. Shin thought his life was over. Some of them were terrified. One of them assured them, "We won't get in trouble with the law. We were beaten up too." Just then, they heard someone screaming outside. It was the squinted guy's mom. She entered the room and started taking her son outside without saying anything. The detective stopped her. "You'll be charged with obstruction of justice. Your son beat up some kids." She yelled at him, "Don't you know who my husband is? He's close to the station chief." She blamed his friends. "You're all failures." When her son asked her to stop saying that, she started making fun of them even more. While they were arguing, one of the other bullies' father arrived. When the detective told him what his son did, he argued, "Boys fight all the time. That's how they become men. The school violence committee should handle this." But Detective Kim and the uncles weren't going to let that happen. The first uncle, seeing it wasn't going as he had planned, said they beat someone up and 2 girls were involved. Stealing a car and driving without a license are also crimes. The father got angry. "Who are you?" The first uncle replied he is from the Fire Bear gang. Hearing this, the father's tone changed. He asked the first uncle, "Should we solve it ourselves? I'm also a gangster with connections to the boss." But when the first uncle told him that the guy his son beat up was the boss's son, the guy was speechless. After that, the mom asked, "Where are the victims? They just have to apologize to them." Just then, Kenji and the others entered the room, refusing any apology. The Fire Bear gang's lawyer also came and gave them more evidence. After a while, the detective asked, "Who stole the car and drove without a license?" Shin couldn't say the gangster's name because he had threatened to kill him. Shin said, "I was the one who stole the car and drove it." But the first uncle knew he was covering for the guy. He told Kenji and the others, "Go home, we'll clean up this mess." Seeing all of this, the second uncle said, "There's a traitor in our gang." He called for an emergency meeting. The first uncle asked the second uncle, "What should we do if we find the traitor?" The second uncle replied, "I'll kill him with my own hands." The first uncle agreed. Detective Kim told Kenji, "I'll do my best to bring these thugs to justice." The detective told him how proud he was of their town. He even mentioned Kenji winning the city's Courageous Citizen Award twice. Kenji got teary-eyed, thinking, "I'm not the same person anymore." The first uncle took son Jun aside. He needed to talk to him about something important. The first uncle advised him to go to the hospital first. But Son Jun knew he'd be admitted to the emergency room. He wouldn't be able to meet his sister, who was worried sick. So, he decided to endure it a little longer. The third uncle told Kenji to sit in the front. But the fourth uncle accused him of trying to get in the way of their dating life. Only then did the third uncle realize what he was about to do. After that, they started teasing them, acting weird. He quickly realized the uncles were trying to help them get together. Even on the way, they told Kenji it was okay to come home late. Kenji asked them to just drive and stop acting so strange. The third uncle said, "I made things awkward between you two." He asked Kenji to say something. The fourth uncle teased them even more, asking what she liked about Kenji. They got to their bike, and the uncles dropped them off there. The uncles left, assuring Kenji that they'd explain everything to the first uncle. So, he shouldn't hurry. Kenji apologized to E on behalf of his weird uncles. They got on the bike, and this time, Kenji held on her waist without her telling him to. She was off guard, and in her excitement, her wound opened up. They stopped by Kenji's house to get it treated. They laughed and had fun, remembering all the weird things they'd gone through. He looked at him seriously, but Kenji had no idea what was going on. She leaned forward to kiss him, but he asked, "Are you angry? Is that why you're acting like that?" He apologized to her. This made E furious. She stomped off, calling him a loser, idiot, and more. He apologized again and asked her to come back, but she didn't stop. Just then, Sun Jun's sister started hitting her for being mean to Kenji, who was kind but weak. She wanted to thank Kenji and drag Sun Jun there. Diane asked Sun Jun to beat up E. Sun Jun apologized for interrupting them when things were going so well. He acted as if nothing was going on, calling him an idiot. Kenji also chimed in, cluelessly saying they were only hitting each other. He got angry again and left, calling them idiots, stupid, and all kinds of things. After she left, Sun Jun said to Kenji that he needed to talk to him about something. It was related to the Super Alliance. All the while, the uncles were watching them through a telescope. They were frustrated that Kenji had no game and was clueless. They needed to improve his dating life. They wanted to get on with that plan right away, but Sun Jun was with him. They decided to bring them inside. The first uncle asked them if they knew how to play with kids. They showed him how they would play with her, with big smiles. The second uncle smacked them and told them he'd do that himself. The second uncle comes outside and greets her. He's holding a kitchen knife. She gets so scared seeing him, and she grabs onto Sun Jun's leg. Kenji scolded him for scaring her and told him to bring a teddy bear or something. The second uncle heard the word bear and ripped off his shirt to show her the bear tattoo on his back. Kenji was stunned and told him she'd be terrified for life. But, much to their surprise, she finds the bear to be cute. After he took her inside, Sun Jun told Kenji that the rumor of him taking over the school had spread like wildfire. The Super Alliance would be on his back now, so he needed to be careful. First, they needed to get as much information about them as possible through PTU, who was still with the Super Alliance. They even approached Sun Jun and would have approached Kenji as well if he hadn't threatened to crush them. Sun Jun asked him if he was planning to take them on by himself. Kenji replies that he had given his word already, and he couldn't back down now. Sun Jun used to not care about alliances or other bullies, but he had changed his mind as well. Those guys would come for him too, even though he wasn't doing anything, so before they came for him, he crushed them first. Kenji was thrilled that he was on his side and asked him if they were in an alliance as well now. But Sun Jun wasn't too keen to call it an alliance. They were just fighting together, that's all. But Kenji didn't care and called it an alliance anyway. The second uncle was making cookies with Dune and was doing the bear dance with her when the first uncle came there. He sees him half naked in front of a kid and gets furious. He charged at him, saying what was he doing, and called him an abuser. The second uncle tried to explain, but he wasn't listening. Dune grabbed onto his leg to stop him and explained to him that she was Sun Jun's sister. He apologizes to her and does the bear dance with them at her request. Kenji and Song Jun see them and ask what is going on. They invite them to dance as well and force Song Jun to do it as well. Song Jun was ashamed of what he had just done. After Dune was asleep, they got on with the meeting. Kenji asked him why he was so serious and where were the other uncles. This was a sensitive topic, so the first uncle asked everyone who was not an executive to stand by. It was about the gangster who had attacked him. He told Kenji he was from the second uncle's gang. To identify him, they tried to recall any specific characteristics. He had a huge scar on his face. Hearing this, the second uncle started spouting nonsense. The fourth uncle also had a huge scar, he said, but the third uncle told him to calm down. Kenji would have recognized him if that were the case, he explained. Besides, we all have some kind of scars on our faces. Kenji assured him that it wasn't any of the uncles. The guy had a unique kind of scar on his cheeks. Sun Jun described his build and other facial details. Kenji realized the guy was talking to him as if he already knew him. He had to be someone from their gang. The third and second uncles were going insane and threatened to go to war with them. But the first uncle told them to shut up and calm down. We can't just point a finger at anyone without solid proof, even if we know who's behind it. They then moved on to their next matter regarding the Super Alliance. The second uncle told them the history of the Super Alliance. They always used to fight each other all the time, he said. The area was filled with gang fights until a legendary fighter unified the schools. That legendary fighter being the second uncle himself. He was the one who created the Super Alliance, but they used to call it a different name. They were shocked to hear that. He told them they should ask the rest of the current leaders of the Super Alliance. Meanwhile, Duck Park was thrilled because this was the moment he was waiting for. On the other hand, he was bored at her house when her brother got back. She asked him to cook something for her, but she was in a bad mood. Just then, he got a call from the second uncle, who explained the situation to him. He was still mad at Kenji for not having a clue about what she was doing. It didn't help that he hadn't texted her yet. She didn't want to text first because of pride, but she was impatient and texted him anyway. Just then, her brother entered her room, storming. "Do you want to get together with Kenji?" he asked. "I'll help with that." At first, she didn't believe him and thought he was just teasing her. But when he told her his plan, she was ready to go through with it. The plan was he would tell her about the Super Alliance, and she would tell Kenji. By doing that, she'd get a lot of time alone with Kenji. She started dreaming about it and was ready to write down every detail. But he orders her to cook for him first. This time, she went running to cook for him. Turns out, this was the master plan he was thinking of earlier. If her sister dates him and eventually marries him, he'd have a good life in the gang. He was determined to make sure they date each other, and then he'll help EG become the lady boss. He laughs menacingly just thinking about this. On the other hand, the second uncle continued his legendary story. He used to fight every day to unite the area and to create a super alliance. While he was roaming around picking up fights, that's when he met his first uncle. The first uncle remarks how he was even more fearful back then. Jun asked him if it would be right if they destroyed the alliance, because he was the one who founded it after all. But the second uncle sets aside his feelings and permits them to disband the alliance. Kenji suggests just beating the bad people and not destroying the whole alliance. After the meeting was done, and Kenji left with Song Jun, the first uncle warned the other two uncles about the situation. If they keep investigating, they might find something that could lead to war in the gang. The first uncle says how he hoped no one in their gang was involved. At the Fire Bear and branch office, the boss's right-hand man, Lazy One, was beating the guy who introduced him to the guy, saying he must get punished if his junior makes a mistake. Meanwhile, the guy was just sitting there trembling in fear and apologizing to them. The man orders his secretary to make things right. The scene shifts to a boat in the ocean. We see the SI creature throwing a can in the ocean. Now that they had tied up the loose ends, they needed to make it look like they were helping the other side in a fight against other gangs. Just then, he gets a call from the first uncle who asks him to come to the meeting tomorrow, to which he says he is busy and would think about it. Just then, the first uncle hears seagulls in the background and wonders if they'd already taken care of the guy. Now there was no way for them to find anything, even if they killed everyone on Lei Ian's side. It was too late. He had no choice but to observe the situation for now. Lei Ian remarks how the first uncle had good instincts as usual, but even he won't find anything on them now. He nervously buttons up his shirt. He thought, the teachers would probably call me to the teacher's room when I get to school today, right? He takes a deep breath, his face etched with a mixture of anxiety and determination. Then, he glances out the window, a newfound resolve hardening his gaze. What's happened has happened. I have to follow my own path. He descends the stairs, each step firm and deliberate. Detective Kim will definitely organize a disciplinary committee to punish those involved as well. He mutters to himself, trying to brace himself for the inevitable fallout. It's probably best to go to school and get a grasp on the situation first. As he approaches the front door, first uncles stand by the door. "Young master, have a good day at school," the uncle says, a formal tone coloring his voice. He replies with a simple, "Okay, uncle," but as he walks further, a puzzled expression spreads across his face. He pauses, looking around the opulent hallway. Where are the rest of the uncles? He seems slightly concerned about their absence, the air of unease still clinging to him. First uncle says, they're all doing morning exercises now. He seems to be observing others from a window or something. Uncle says to the younger one, "Have a good day at school, young master." The kid replies cheerfully, "I'll be back later, uncle." Cuts outside. He is standing in front of the house, looking a little troubled, Or maybe guilty? He's thinking, I'm a bad person. I'm bad. Real bad. And then, as if trying to shake it off, I'll get going. Next, we see him striding down the street, and it's all dramatic. Walking like a real man. He's got this confident posture, a fancy belt buckle, and proudly, his face is scrunched up, and he says, spit some saliva. He's actually spitting. The poor guy could never get used to it, no matter how many times he had to do it. He stood there, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple, his face contorted in a grimace, a thin strand of saliva dangling from his lips. In the background, his three uncles in dark suits and face masks stood like silent sentinels, their eyes scanning the street. You guys remember what Hyungnim told us yesterday, right? Second uncle inquired, his voice low and gravelly. To take down any guy that looks suspicious. Yes, came the dutiful reply from the other two. Their faces were hidden behind their protective gear, but their agreement was clear. The scene shifted to a dimly lit conference room. A long table dominated the space. First uncle, shirt sleeves rolled up, stood at the head of the table. His voice booming, he said, young master was attacked by an unknown bastard. This can never happen again. He slammed his hands on the table, punctuating his anger. Around the table, men in identical dark suits sat listening intently. Their faces showed a mixture of concern and determination. Uncle continued, his voice now measured. We will split into groups and constantly protect young master. First up tomorrow will be guys saying and take on scouting the routes. Yes, Hyungnim, the men chorused. Their voices filled with resolute energy, their loyalty unwavering. They were prepared to serve and protect their young master at any cost. The meeting adjourned, but the tension in the room lingered. A silent promise of action hung heavy in the air. Young master has left, let's go. Second uncle barked the order. Urgency laced his tone. The other two, a guy with a small scar above his eye and another with spiky black hair, nodded in agreement. But, Gun-ho, why are you coming along? The scar guy questioned the spiky-haired man. Gun-ho, a bit startled, replied, sorry. He stammered and proceeded to explain himself. Jae-wook Hyungnim asked me to tag along and assist with anything that needs help. Their mission was clear. Let's follow after him without getting caught. They blended into the background, three identically dressed men in dark suits and red ties, all wearing white masks. As they trailed their young master, the bald one observed, young master still looks a little awkward, but is getting better. He seemed to be monitoring the young master's progress, as if assessing his readiness. Suddenly, Gun-ho, the spiky-haired one, piped up, but does young master go to school alone usually? Don't people usually go to school with a group of friends? The scar man agreed and nervously replied, and now that you say it, students do usually go to school with a group of friends. They were also concerned about the well-being of the young master. Second uncle, with worry and sweat, muttered, and it was also the first time that young master brought his friends home. It was an event so monumental, it stirred the undercurrents of the entire household. His colleagues were just as worried and couldn't help but share their concerns. Could it be that our young master doesn't have many friends? One wondered. Another added, shocked. How can he be going to school all alone with so many students? The idea of their precious young master navigating school alone upset them. The sight of other students walking together, chatting and laughing, only made them feel worse. Their young master wasn't with them, and that was not okay. The men struck a dramatic pose, clutching their chests, and with horror in their faces, declared, we don't want that for him. So, the guardians decided to take action. Then, Kenji noticed a familiar person walking ahead of the other students. His eyes widening, he said, that back belongs to Song Jung-suk, Kenji called out, waving with a wide, slightly mischievous grin. He was standing in front of a building, and if you looked closely, you could see a few people peeking out from behind a doorway, all watching the same thing. Hey, Kenji, he replied, sounding a little surprised. He looked a bit skeptical. Then, he seemed to have an idea, and he turned his head slightly, a teasing look in his eye. But aren't you trying to be bad? You're still going to school every day, huh? He kept walking, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening. He glanced back, his brow furrowing. They are. He muttered, a drop of sweat starting to appear on his forehead. Back at the building, the man who called out was still grinning, but now he looked a bit nervous. Why? What is it? Kenji asked, but the people hiding behind him just put their fingers to their lips and whispered, "Chill." Sun Young turned back around, forcing a smile. It's nothing, he said, trying to sound casual, but the sweat on his face told a different story. He was definitely worried about something. What were those guys up to? Okay, so there are these two guys, Kenji and Sun Young, walking down the street. Kenji asked, "Do you have judo training today? I also need to find Do Park Young." Sun Young, looking strong, replied, "Yeah, there's judo training today. Let's go together later." As they're walking, they get into a deeper conversation. Second uncle watching them says, "Yeah, people say that you can be considered successful in life if you manage to make even one real friend." The other guy chimes in, "That's right. Of course, the more you have, the better." It seems like friendship is important to them. Suddenly, a woman calls out, "Oh, hey, Kenji, Sun Young." They turn around, and it's Lee Ji. "Oh, Lee Ji, hi," they reply. She gives him a cheerful wave. Then things get interesting. Kenji says, "I think it's the first time I've seen you wear the school uniform properly." Lee Ji, a little self-conscious, asks, "How do I look? Am I pretty?" Meanwhile, Sun Young wonders about her intentions, thinking, is she making a move? It seems our young master is causing a stir amongst his entourage. They are whispering, astonished that he could possibly have a female friend. Meanwhile, on the streets, Jong-yoon walking to school. "Hey Kenji, good morning." Jong-yoon calls out, "Jong-yoon, let's go together." Kenji replies with a smile. As they walk, more friends join them, creating a small group. A girl is among them. I feel like I might not be welcome to walk with this group." Jong-yoon says self-consciously. "What are you talking about? We're all friends," Kenji replies reassuringly. The conversation shifts. "But actually, I don't usually take this route. It's been a while since I've walked this route," Jong-yoon mentions casually. "Right? Because we have to walk past the alley that Shin Jaeon-cheol and his clique hang out and smoke," Kenji replies. "But you still insisted on walking this route because you wanted to help?" Jong-yoon continues, his voice full of admiration. Saying Gu and the others who always get extorted, "You're really an angel." Kenji's cheeks flush slightly at the praise. "An angel?" As if, he mutters, trying to downplay his kindness, even though he's pleased. Then suddenly, the expected encounter arrives. An older delinquent appears beside them. All right, so we start off with this dude. Bald head, dark complexion, wearing a blazer, a look on his face like he's just itching for a fight. He's yelling, "Oi, F word. Watch where you're going." He's definitely not having a good day. Cut to the people he's yelling at. There are 4 of them, and they all look surprised, definitely confused. Jong-yoon stammers, "I am sorry." Kenji just exclaims, "What the heck?" He says a simple, "Oh," like she's not quite sure what's happening. Then, she's squinting at the angry guy like she's trying to remember something. "Oh, this kid," she muses. "I'm sure I've seen him in my previous school." Suddenly it clicks. This kid is a part of the Super Alliances. His name is something like Kim Won-in, I think. She started to put the pieces together. The angry guy hears her and immediately snaps back. It's not Won-in, it's Won-ik. He's clearly annoyed, maybe embarrassed, that she remembered him. He adds, "Bloody the B word. Why the F word are you investigating me? Are you interested in me, or something?" His temper is definitely flaring up. Finally, Kenji chimes in. He looks right at Won-ik and says, "Is that so? So you're not Won-in, but you're Won-ik from the Super Alliances, right? Looks like this is going to be interesting." It seems Kenji is really angry, his fist clenched so tight you can see the veins popping out, muttering under his breath about Super Alliances. Lee Won-ik. Sound of clenching or tightening, like he's suppressing his rage. Then there's a shift. Kenji extending his hand, a pleasant smile on his face. "Nice to meet you. I'm Kenji," he says, looking amicable and polite. Kenji is still with his hand extended, ready for a handshake, but the other guy, the man with a shaved head and a dark jacket, is looking back at him surprised. So you're Kenji. I was just on my way to look for you, because I've got something to say to you," he states firmly. "You know Park Myeong-jun from Sangneom High, right?" The man with the shaved head asked. "He says he's got something to say to you. Follow me." He paused, looking slightly annoyed. "Okay, are you not going to shake my hand?" He seemed to be ignoring his extended hand. He seemed unwilling to make contact. The situation was becoming quite tense. "Yeah, all right. Nice to meet you. I'm Lee Won-ik," the man said, extending a hand. The gesture seemed normal enough, like any other first encounter. But as their hands met, a subtle tightening, a squeeze, changed everything. The other man was caught off guard by the intensity. He was clearly disturbed. What the F word is with this bastard? He thought. A sudden surge of anger and suspicion flooded his mind. Squeezing my hand and smiling creepily, the handshake started out friendly. but it had turned into a silent battle of wills. It was accompanied by a sinister, unnerving smile. His gaze hardened. A thoughtful look began to show on his face. But he began to think. The stage was set for the next act in this tense confrontation. The true intentions behind the smile and the crushing grip were about to be revealed. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. It radiated from the man gripping the other's hand with bone-crushing force. "Why are you here when Park Myung-jun is the one who has something to say to me?" He growled, his voice a low rumble. The man whose hand was in peril looked up. Fear was etched on his face. "I'm here because he asked me to come." "What are you doing? Let go of me," he pleaded, his eyes wide with panic. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he struggled in vain. Kenji's friends lingered. Their faces showed a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. "There are no police or teachers around, right?" He whispered, nervously scanning the street. The grip tightened. The man being held winced in pain. His eyes hardened. "If he has something to say to me," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "tell him to come find me himself." It started with a handshake. But this wasn't your friendly, nice to meet you kind of handshake. This was a grip of power, an iron clasp that made the recipient cry out, "Arghhh." You could see the bones almost bending, the flesh contorting under the immense pressure. The man with the vice-like grip didn't even flinch. The other man, now clearly in agony, spewed out saliva from the pain. His eyes were wide with shock and fear, almost bugging out of his head. He was being used to deliver a message. The strong-gripped man said in a cold tone, "Pass the message to the rest. Tell them that I will beat up any member of the Super Alliances seen loitering in front of our school." He looked utterly defeated and teary-eyed, realizing that he should have known better than to be the messenger. F word, he stammered. "I thought you wanted me to ask him to talk to you directly? Then you should go to him directly." We see Kenji's face, a shadow partially obscuring his eyes. His jaw is set, and he mutters, almost to himself, "Grip strength, potato crush." It was a terrifying scene. One moment, the man was standing, seemingly in control, and the next he was in immense pain. A thin stream of what looked like saliva, or perhaps even some unholy essence, leaked from his mouth as he was pulled deeper into this surreal vortex. Kenji, wide-eyed, clearly concerned, and declares in no uncertain terms, "That's true. Bring me to Sangmyeomhai then." Then, the bald-headed man is now on the ground, trembling and covered in tears, rage twisting his face. The poor soul is desperately kneeling, hands outstretched as he bellows, "F-word bastard, are you kidding?" Back to the young man. His brow is furrowed. His eyes are wide and serious, with a subtle hint of anger. He flatly replies, "I'm not kidding, though." Kenji's hand, reaching outward. His expression is serious and resolute. He extends his hand, and it seems like he has made his decision, stepping forward. There was this guy, looking all serious and composed. This guy a total mess, practically begging for mercy. Sorry. I'll bring you there. I'll bring you there. Just don't grab me, please," he stammered, clutching his head, tears streaming down his face. Kenji announced to his crew that he was heading over there for a while. All right, so things were about to get real at Sangmyeomhai. Then, Lee Ji, she seemed to be the voice of reason. "Hey, no way. What are you trying to do? Going there by yourself?" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with concern. "I agree with Lee Ji as well," chimed in Sun Young. He seemed genuinely worried. There was a sense of danger associated with Sangmyeomhai. Lee Ji added, "If you're going to go, then bring Sun Young along." It was clear that this was not a mission to be undertaken lightly. Lastly, Jongyun looked like he was overthinking everything. He blurted out in a state of panic, "Let's take a step back. How about giving him your telephone number first, as compared to just going there so abruptly?" It's as if he was trying to solve a very complicated equation with very little data. So yeah, a trip to Sangmyeomhai seemed like a whole lot of trouble for everyone involved. As expected of the brain of Jurun Hai, Jongyun, Kenji continued sarcastically. He chimed in, "Oh, you're pretty good, you loser." It was clearly taunting, a bit of harmless adolescent antagonism. The man with a buzz cut, looking disheveled, watched them from a short distance. F-word, these guys are a joke, he muttered to himself with disdain. He sized up the situation, a flicker of cunning in his eyes. "I'll run off while they're F-king around," he thought, spotting an opportunity to escape. But just as he began to tiptoe away, Kenji shouted, "Hey, Lee one in. Stop right there." The buzz-cut man's face contorted in rage, his eyes widening in fury. I told you multiple times, I'm Wanik. You blockhead bastard. Kenji chasing after him, arm outstretched. Hey, wait up, he shouts. You still don't know my number. He puts on a burst of speed. Clearly, the person he's chasing isn't interested in sharing numbers. Next, we see the guy running away. His face is pure panic. He's sweating, eyes wide with fear, muttering, Fort. He shouted, I'll come again next time. But internally he thought I'll die if I get caught. He's desperately trying to get away. He's really booking it too. Come on, my legs. He says, let's get away. He's still running, and Kenji is right behind him. Finally, we get a weird perspective from above, showing both the running man and the chaser. Some onlookers are bewildered with what's going on around them. What the hell? One of them exclaims. This chase has definitely caught their attention, making them wonder what's going on. F word. I'm saved. You guys are still here. The bald guy in the gray coat stumbles towards his companions, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with panic. He gasps, clutching at his wrist. His arrival seems to confuse his so-called friends. One with slick back hair and a cigarette dangling from his lips squints. Hey, what's with your hands? He asks, are you a retard? The other boy pipes up. I thought you asked us to wait since you were going to go alone, he asks. Are you done already? The bald guy's panic flares again. Sweat beads on his forehead as he yells. F word. Kenji is a F-king crazy bastard. Call Myong Jun quickly. In the background, Kenji with fiery red eyes is running towards them with purpose. Tack tack, his feet pound the pavement. Suddenly, the scared schoolboy's face brightens with an almost delusional hope. I knew it. Kenji, you're here to save me. He practically beams, tears welling up. I'm getting beaten up and extorted here, he cries, pleading. Beat these guys up for me, Kenji. Kenji strides into the scene, looking perplexed. Sengu, he asks, what are you doing here? Sengu shouts, I am getting beaten up and extorted here. Beat these guys up for me, Kenji. One of the cronies mutters, more confused than threatening. What's with this bastard? We didn't hit him yet, though. It seems chaos is about to erupt at this school. Kenji's eyes are wide with shock and disbelief. He can't believe what he's hearing. What? Is that true? Did these bastards come to our school to extort our school's students? He's practically vibrating with anger. Cut to the source of his fury. A trio of tough-looking dudes standing right in front of the school. One of them has a cigarette dangling from his lips and is clearly annoyed. Why would an annoying bastard early in the morning? What do you want? His buddy, standing next to him, chimes in, a smug smirk on his face. Oi, we didn't hit this bastard, though. Looks like they already had a run-in with some poor soul. Suddenly, Sengo bursts out of nowhere, face contorted with rage. Spit flies from his mouth as he screams, Kenji, beat the shit out of all of them. Kenji, now pointing a finger at the tough guys. I take back my words about going to Sangnium High. I'll beat all of you up right here. Sangu, come over. He's serious. He's ready to fight. But then, the bullied student seems to find courage himself. Get lost, you bastards. Kenji is my friend. Don't get all cocky. Looks like things are about to get really interesting. A fight seems inevitable, with loyalty and friendship taking center stage. This dude got this tight expression on his face, and his knuckles are kind of cracking like he's ready for a fight. He says, haha, it tells us all about what you're like, seeing as how your F-King loser friend is acting all cocky. Then, Kenji gets hit with another insult. Kenji, you're just a bastard that only has connections. Cut to Kenji, looking genuinely pissed. He's screaming, I'll beat all of you up and give you my number. Ask Park Myoing Jun to call me. Behind him, there's Sengu with a crazy look in his eyes, yelling, kill them all. Seems like things are escalating quickly. Then a close-up shows a foot slamming down. It's like someone is about to get there, but kicked. You can practically feel the impact. Next, this guy is now completely enraged. He's screaming, know your place? You're acting way too cocky. You can see the veins popping in his neck. He's ready to fight. And then, boom, the punch. He swings, hitting Kenji square in the back. It's like, take that. Kenji clenches his fist, his face showing grim determination. The Korean lettering beside him hints at the powerful force about to be unleashed. Cock. The sound seems to echo. His fist connects with the face of another. The force of the blow ripples outwards. The impact sends the recipient reeling. His face is contorted in pain as he's launched backwards. You can almost feel the concussive force. Later, the man who was hit lies on the ground. His cheek is swollen and discolored. A trickle of saliva escapes his lips. He's clearly out of the fight. Two other men, observing the scene, are stunned. One, with a surprised look and outstretched hand, exclaims, "I think he's gone." His companion, equally shocked, adds, "What the heck? I thought he was a F-King loser. He's quite good, though." From behind a corner, Sanga taunts them. "Hee, look at your pathetic state, you bastards. It's clear this is far from over." "Hey, that's Sangu," Jong-Yun shouts with the group, who are sprinting towards him. The next moment, we see Sangu up close. His eyes are wide with excitement. "Oh, you guys came at the right time," he exclaims. Kenji is winning right now. He looks really happy. It's like they're about to witness something awesome. But then, bam, we cut to this girl. She's got a serious face. She looks really intense. "What? Why are you just hiding away?" she says. "Have you gone crazy? You should either fight together with him or go get help." She looks angry and concerned all at the same time. Then we see the guy down on his knees, looking beat up. He's got some cuts on his face, and he's saying, "This bastard." Then he complains, "I couldn't dodge your hit because you hit me out of nowhere." Finally, there are a few more guys, the same one who's down on his knees, plus two others. They're all looking rough and determined. One of them is saying, "It's not because I couldn't. Guys, let's get that bastard together." And another chimes in, "Yeah, if we gang up on him together, I'm sure we'll win." The beat-up guy seems to be complaining about his hand. He scoffed, turning his head slightly, his expression one of mild irritation rather than fear. "The three of you are taking me on together? Better be quick. I still have to go to school," he stated. Honestly, he wasn't even worried. Looking at them huddled together, they seemed almost pitifully weak. 3 against 1. He mused internally. They had been standing just outside. He had fully expected it to be a quick confrontation, nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Hold on to this for a moment," he spoke, gesturing towards the school bag. Jong-Yun looked up at him, bewildered, stammering, "Oh, okay." Clearly surprised by the request. Song-Yun walking down the street, kind of serious. He's like, What are you guys doing there?" Then, boom, Kenji jumps out all surprised. "Oh, you're here," he exclaims, balling up his fists a bit. The first group of guys, the ones the tough dude spotted, they're freaking out. "S. Song-Jung." One of them stutters, eyes wide with panic. It's like they've seen a ghost or something. One of them is practically sweating bullets. Turns out this Sun Young guy is kind of a big deal. One of the panicking dudes is saying, "Sun Young is too overpowered. I transferred schools because I wanted to avoid meeting him." The other one suggests, "Let's immediately call someone named Myeong Jun for backup," clearly overwhelmed by the prospect of facing Song Jung. Finally, things come full circle. Kenji, who was surprised to see him, is now standing tall, looking at Song Young. With a determined look, he says, "Song, do you know these guys? Don't interfere in our fight." Song Young, cool as a cucumber, replies, "Okay." It looks like he has no intention of intervening, letting them face whatever conflict is coming. This will be interesting. All right, so there's Song Young, kind of expressionless, standing there. He says, "You heard him, right? I'm just going to watch. Fight all you want." Then we cut to another guy, looking all stressed and sweaty, thinking to himself, "It looks like he's bluffing, though. Won't he join in if it looks like Kenji is losing? Let's call Myeong Jun quickly. He's clearly worried and wants reinforcements." Next up, a third guy is clutching his hand, looking panicked. He declares, "I can't fight with you guys because my hand is injured. The two of you will have to do the fighting." Excuses, right? He's obviously trying to get out of fight. We move on to a fourth guy, clenching his fist, looking frustrated. He's thinking, "We can do something about Kenji with the two of us, but the problem is Song Jung. Only someone like Myeong Jun can take him on." So, Sun Young is the real threat, and they need this Myeong Jun to even the odds. "Call Park Myeong Jun." "I don't care," Kenji says, looking like he's fed up with the excuses and ready to call in the big guns. It sounds like Myeong Jun is their ace in the hole, the one they call when things get serious. Looks like this fight's about to get a whole lot bigger. Yi's eyes narrowed and teeth bared, bursts out, "Hey, don't just fold your arms and observe. Fight together with him, or stop him." Her voice, sharp and demanding, cuts through the air. Her fist is clenched in frustration. Turning to the stoic figure beside her, she hears him calmly state, Kenji says that he wants to fight alone. His words are measured, a deliberate attempt to quell her rising anger. There'll be a lot more such incidents in the future. He should be able to take care of something like that by himself. Otherwise, it'll be hard for him to get stronger from here. Her response is immediate and explosive. "What F-King bullshit?" she fumes, her expression a storm of fury. Snatching out her phone, She glares at him, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You need me to call Lee Do Park to beat the shit out of you before you'll get your mind straight, right? Moments later, a roar of an engine shatters the silence. We see from behind, a black jacket emblazoned with red characters on her back, straddling a powerful motorcycle. The helmet is on, the visor down, and the bike explodes forward, a blur of motion and rage. Another shot reveals a red helmet. The jacket's character is still visible, leans into a sharp turn. The air hung thick and heavy. The group stood clustered on the sidewalk. Suddenly, the sound of tires screeching filled the air, ripping through the quiet urban hum. A bright red motorcycle roared to a halt, its sleek frame cutting a stark contrast against the muted backdrop of the street. The rider, encased in a matching helmet, was a blur of motion and urgency. With a practiced hand, they pulled off the helmet, revealing a man with long, flowing hair, his expression a mixture of anger and hurt. "Look at this," he said, his voice laced with a barely contained fury. "I was wondering why you guys aren't picking up my calls or coming back." His eyes swept over the group, a silent accusation hanging in the air. The guy with the long, gray hair didn't seem too pleased. Standing in front of a bright red motorcycle, he said with a slight frown, "I only told you guys to relay a message, but you ended up fighting." He sounded more disappointed than angry, really. One with a scar on his face shouted, "Myong Jun." Another, further back, yelled aggressively, "F-word bitches, you're all dead." Kenji muttered, "Park Myong Jun," while the Sun Young reiterated Super Alliance's Sangnium High, "Park Myong Jun." It was clear they had a score to settle with this Park Myong Jun guy. Two other guys were watching the scene unfold, visibly nervous. Sengu, wide-eyed, asked, "Isn't he the boss of Sangnium High, Park Myong Jun?" Zhang Yun, equally anxious, responded, "He looks super carefree, though. Just how strong is he?" There was an evident respect, mixed with fear, in their voices. Finally, the man who seemed to be Park Myong Jun, the one with the long hair, grinned, his eyes gleaming with amusement. He casually moved his hairs behind his ear, sporting a cross earring, and said with a relaxed tone, "Whoa, what an uncomfortable welcome." He definitely seemed to enjoy stirring up trouble. "Park Myong Jun," he's seemingly calling out name. She stood composed, but there was an underlying tension in her expression, a sharpness in her eyes. Then we saw her confronting Park Myong Jun, Li Yiji, who was obviously irritated by his presence. "Oh, Li Yiji, you're here too? Don't stare at me so intensely," the man said tauntingly. Li Yiji's response was immediate and fierce. "Well, just F-word off. You F-King B-word." Clearly, there was no love lost between these two. The man, seemingly amused by the confrontation, laughed. "Li Yiji, you're so short-tempered, huh?" He continued, trying to defuse the situation, or perhaps just stirring the pot. "Sun Young and Kenji, can't you guys at least welcome me happily? We've met before." Then focuses on Song Jun opposite the talkative one. "Don't come any closer. Speak from there. We can hear you fine," he growls. The talkative man feigns fear. "Oh, how scary." Then the man turns serious, holding up a finger, his face determined. "All right, firstly, I'm not here to fight. I only came because I wanted to talk. Let go of my friends first," he demands, his tone leaving no room for argument. He's trying to negotiate, but the situation is clearly volatile. "So you see these three dudes? Total goons, right? They're backed into a corner, mouths wide open, yelling what? Let go of US. They look terrified, like they've seen a ghost or something." Now cut to two other guys, looking way more composed. Song Jun got a serious look on his face, saying, "Let go of them?" Then Kenji chimes in, "Those guys hit and took money from a student from our school." Then we see a close-up of this our guy, Kenji. He's clenching his fist, muscles bulging, and he's got this determined look on his face. He says, "And you want us to let them go? It's okay if we let them go after we beat them up, right?" You can just feel the intensity, like he's about to unleash some serious justice. And of course, there's a little peanut gallery watching. A blushing, wide-eyed, saying, "Damn, Kenji." Then one of her friends is like, "Wow, Kenji looks really badass." And Senga beaming, "As expected of my friend." Clearly, Kenji is someone they admire. But the story takes a little twist. We see a calm guy with long hair and earrings. He says, "This isn't what I expected, though. I really came here because I got something important to talk about and not to fight. I didn't send them because I wanted to fight." It looks like he wants to avoid a fight and talk instead. Kenji is walking towards something, determined. He just told someone, "I thought you wanted us to let your friends go." We'll talk after I beat you up first. Songjun says, Kenji, wait up. Let's hear him out first. His buddy seems a little hesitant. Ah, shall we do that then? They look ready for a fight, but are willing to listen just a little bit. He stands confidently, hands on his hips, and declares, as expected of Songjun, all right, since I've got important stuff to talk with Kenji and Sunyoung about, the rest of you go away. Cut to a group of onlookers. He folded arms, looking unimpressed. She comments, look at how carefree he is. So F King annoying. Let's go elsewhere, losers. The guy next to her, nervously clutching a judo bag, worries, he should be fine since Sunyoung is here, right? Senga chimes in more aggressively. Kenji beat the shit out of that long-hair guy. Finally, we see other group. One guy, clutching his face, asks, Myong-jun, should we go elsewhere too? If we're not here, it'll be 2 of them against you. Will you be okay? Another guy backs him up. We'll stay here. Kenji broke my hand. The third pleads, yeah, don't be too rash. It seems like there's a lot of tension brewing. Myong-jun, this older guy with a serious face and hair like old silver, is absolutely fuming. He's got his eyes narrowed like slits, and he's yelling at a group of guys, practically spitting venom. I told you guys to relay my message, right? Did I ask you to start a fight? He looks furious, like they've totally messed up his plan. You guys being here is just a hindrance to me, he grumbles, and then throws him a sharp, go back to our school. I'll talk to you guys later. The guys he's talking to are a little shaken. You can see them standing there, looking like kicked puppies. One of them, his face pale, mutters, okay, let's go, guys. Another whispers. Myong-jun looks freaking angry, though. As they shuffle away, one of them complains under his breath. Freak, how? Is that our fault, though? Another chimes in, sounding equally aggrieved. Freak, we just did as we were told. Then someone throws Kenji under the bus. Kenji, that jerk was the one who started it first, and I think my hand is broken. Seems like they followed orders a bit too enthusiastically. On the other side of the street, Jong-yoon with a shoulder bag nervously says, it should be okay for us to go off like that, right? Kenji looks like he's angry. He reassures him, it'll be fine. Since Sunyoung is there too, I could just call Lee Park if needed. They seem a bit concerned, but confident in their friend's ability to handle the situation. Jong-yoon looking kind of nervous, running his hand through his hair. He's thinking out loud. It'll probably be fine, yeah? Since everyone knows that Kenji is the Firebear gang boss son. You can tell he's hoping that's enough to keep things from escalating. You're remembering something. She's got this serious expression on her face, and she's saying, while that's true, I'm a little bothered by what Lee Park said. Then, she reveals what's bothering her. Be extra careful of Park Myong-jun, since he's someone who took over Sangnium High's boss when he was in his first year. That sounds like a guy you don't want to mess with. Then, Sengu, pointing his finger up in the air. He's all like, they were the ones who started the fight, though. Kenji is right in beating all of them up, including Park Myong-jun. He seems like he's enjoying the chaos. But hold up, he isn't amused. She's glaring, and she's totally lost her patience. This loser bastard has been mumbling stuff for ages now. So annoying. Hey, you have a death wish? She snarls. You can practically feel the tension. Then, the perspective shifts to a close-up of Sengu, looking angry and cornered. The guy's teeth are gritted, and he's saying, why are you picking on me? Do I look like a pushover? He seems ready to fight back. Looks like things are about to get messy. His eyes held an unsettling intensity as he challenged her. Lee Ji, do you think you can win against me in a fight? Yi was visibly caught off guard. Her expression shifted to one of shock and disbelief. Hey, what? A fight? She stammered, her face etched with confusion and a hint of fear. Sangha pressed on, unleashing a torrent of insults. Weak bitch, you're too scared to say anything, right? No matter how much of a loser I am, do you think I would lose to a bitch like you? Stop acting up. He punctuated his words with a series of threatening gestures, his movements jerky and aggressive. Jong-yoon, witnessing the scene, intervened, trying to reason with Sengu. Hey Sengu, how can we be fighting among ourselves? Why are you acting like this suddenly? He asked, bewildered by Sengu's uncharacteristic behavior. But Yi wasn't listening to anyone anymore. A dark rage simmered within her, transforming her features. Her eyes narrowed, her face contorted with fury, and she clenched her teeth. That F-word, Sengu. F-king loser bastard. I'll kill him. She seethed, her voice laced with venomous intent. What's so important for you to ask everyone to leave? You can spit it out now, Songjun questioned, his gaze piercing. He seemed impatient and ready to get down to business. Then, a figure with long, gray hair and a confident smirk stepped forward. "I'm glad I kept you back, Song-jung. It'd have been hard to talk to Kenji if you weren't around," he exclaimed, a hint of amusement in his tone. The response from the Kenji was immediate. "Whatever, just speak already," he urged, his expression neutral, but his eyes hinted at underlying tension. The gray-haired man seemed to revel in the anticipation. "Since you look like you want to kill me so badly, I'll dive into it," he taunted, enjoying the edge in the atmosphere. He stretched out his fist, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "Kenji and Song-jung, let's make an alliance together," he declared, his tone leaving no room for argument. Both of them blurts out, "An alliance?" You can tell they wasn't expecting that. Song-jun is thinking about the proposition. He muses, "Allying with us would mean that you're betraying the super alliances, though. What would you gain from doing something like that?" But inside his head, he's thinking, if it's allying with someone like Sangyeom's Park Myeong-jun, then it'd definitely be of help to us when we go after the rest of the schools. So, he's clearly weighing the pros and cons. The guy who proposed the alliance, a dude with long, wavy hair and a slight smirk, replies, "I'm not just doing this without thinking it through, so I'll let you know what my plans are after we become allies." He seems pretty confident and a bit mysterious, like he's got a whole strategy laid out. Back to Song-jun, he's deep in thought, rubbing his chin. I think we'll need some time to think this through." Inside, he's acknowledging, it'll definitely be quite hard for just me and Kenji to destroy the super alliances alone. This is quite a good proposal. So, he's acknowledging the potential benefits and challenges. Finally, the long-haired guy, standing in front of a sweet-looking red motorbike, wraps up the conversation with, "All right, don't make me wait for too long, though. I'll look forward to hearing from you soon." He's still got that cocky grin, clearly eager to seal the deal. The Kenji and Song-jun just stand there, contemplating. You can almost feel the tension, wondering if they'll take the offer. It starts with Sun-young catching some serious heat from Kenji, who is freaking out, yelling, "Song-jung, how can you just decide to do something like that by yourself? I'm gonna beat them all up." He's clearly worked up and ready for a fight. But Song-jung is calm, cool, and collected. He's got a tired look on his face. He responds, "It's all for the sake of being able to beat them all up more easily, so let's just think of this in a more positive light, Kenji." Long-hair guy pulled back, and he's pointing a finger. "Kenji, you need to calm down." "Ha," he says. He adds with a more serious tone, "Do you think you can easily destroy the super alliances just by getting all excited like that?" It seems like everyone is telling Kenji to chill out. Of course, Kenji doesn't chill out. He's now even more riled up. He's shouting, "I knew it, I need to beat his ass." Seriously, this guy is just itching for a fight. And finally, even with all the talk of alliances and working together, Kenji makes it clear that no matter what, he's still going to throw down. He's pointing his finger and yelling, "Even if we do end up allying, I'll still beat your ass." So, yeah, it looks like this alliance is going to be a little bit complicated. Good luck to whoever has to deal with Kenji. Sure, I'll let you hit me all you want," he said. The words dripped with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He carefully placed the helmet over his head. As the visor clicked into place with attack, all that could be seen of his face was the lower half, framed by long, graying hair. "All right, I'll wait for you to contact me then." He swung a leg over the red motorcycle and revved the engine. Its growl echoed in the street. Song-jun and Kenji watched him go. Kenji looked downright angry. "I don't like that bastard. Just why exactly do you want to team up with someone like him?" he fumed. Song-jun said, "Let's walk to school first. I'll explain on the way. Park Myeong-jun is definitely useful to us." His voice was steady, with a hint of something like calm assurance as they started walking. Kenji says, "In any case, it's okay if I beat him up after everything, right?" Song-jun nods in agreement. "Why, yeah, let's do that." And they arrived at our school while talking. Now the scene shifts and we see them again, much closer, walking in front of what looks like their school. Their expressions are serious, almost grim. The atmosphere of our school is now vastly different from how it used to be. You can almost feel the tension hanging in the air. Finally, we see them inside the school building, walking down a hallway. Sun-young still looking imposing, but there's a slight hint of a smile on Kenji's face. They seem like they're ready for whatever this different atmosphere is throwing their way. The corridor was buzzing, a hive of whispered gossip and youthful energy. The air vibrated with a low hum of conversation, a familiar soundtrack to the daily school routine. Students milled about, clustered in small groups, sharing secrets and laughter. But then a silence descended, thick and heavy. The cheerful chatter abruptly ceased, leaving an unnerving stillness in the air. All eyes turned, fixated on something, or rather, someone who had just arrived on the scene. It was Kenji. The students, frozen in place, watched them with a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and maybe even a little fear. The normal day had just taken a sharp, unexpected turn. Two guys are walking away from the bulletin board. One says, "Haha, let's go back and wait for the next class." The other one's right beside him, looking a little edgy, maybe nervous. A couple of girls are heading out the other way. One's got this slightly manic grin on her face, chattering to her friend, "Haha, let's go quickly." Something's definitely up. Suddenly, the perspective shifts. We're looking at the very thing they were avoiding, the bulletin board. Big letters at the top scream, "New information." Two guys stand there, backs to us, staring intently at the notices posted. Then, the punchline hits. There's a table, a list of names and punishments. Turns out it's all about Shin Jaeong-cheol and his crew. Shin Jaeong-cheol himself, Year 2, Class 4, expelled. Boom. And then there are a few other names, each from different classes, all with the same punishment. Needs to attend school violence disciplinary meeting. The text below says it all. The incident was being handled much faster than expected. So, whatever those kids were up to, it clearly landed them in some serious trouble. And the school ain't messing around. Was Shin Jaeong-cheol exempted from the school violence disciplinary meeting because he's going to be charged as a criminal? The question lingered unspoken, hanging over the Kenji like a shroud. Soon, rumors about Shin Jaeong-cheol and his clique getting punished spread like wildfire, drawing the name of Song Jung-suk. Whispers echoed through the corridors. They said Kenji beat all of them up. Another voice countered, no. They said Sun Young did it. Damn, I guess he's a gangster through and through, huh? One whispered, glancing nervously at Kenji, who stood stoically beside Song Jung-suk. Kenji is now a bully. Crazy shit. Some students started to avoid Kenji, while others spoke about him as being like the others. Is that the truth? One student questioned Sengu, his eyes wide with curiosity. Kenji, is he the boss of our school now? The other student nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, on top of being the Fire Bear Gang boss son, he also has Sun Young by his side. He'd naturally be the new boss of Jiran High. The weight of the rumors settled heavily on the school, transforming ordinary students into figures of intrigue and fear. In one corner of the hallway, students whispered about the power dynamics shaping the school's social hierarchy. But actually, Shin Jaeong-cheol just acted like he was the boss because Senior Lee Do Park was backing him up, one student said, lowering their voice. Another speculated, the real boss in fighting is Song Jung. Whispers continued. Then, are they going to go with a two-boss system where both of them would be the boss? One student said, shouldn't that be the case? Then we see two young men, Kenji and a taller Song Jun, were standing in a school hallway. They were eyeing a notice board, a look of curiosity mixed with apprehension on their faces. Kenji seemed particularly taken aback, a realization slowly dawning on him. He thought to himself, did I become the boss for the second years? A bewildered expression settled on his face as the weight of the situation began to sink in. The third-year students were already under the command of Lee Do Park Hyung, so that left the second years to him. And just like that, it happened. Kenji accidentally became the boss of Jiran High's second years. Amidst the chaos of his newfound status, Jong Yoon turned to Kenji, his brow furrowed slightly. Kenji, are you okay? He asked, concern coloring his voice. The situation had clearly taken a toll on Kenji, who looked somewhat dazed and overwhelmed by everything that had transpired. The air crackled with whispers and rumors. They say that Kenji got Shin Jaeong-cheol's clique. One voice buzzed, a digital bubble of gossip floating through the digital ether. They say that Sun Young is in it with him as well. Another voice chimed in, adding fuel to the fire. A wave of unfairness washed over the digital crowd. Is it super unfair that he's from the Fire Bear Gang? Someone complained. It's freaking unfair to have Sun Young on his side on top of the Fire Bear Gang, backing him up, came the echoing lament. Meanwhile, Kenji etched with worry, stared intently at his phone, his grip tight. Jiran High is a mess, he muttered under his breath. His gaze darkened, his brows furrowing in frustration. What does Lee Do Park, that bastard, doing? He seethed. Elsewhere, Duo Park stood in a school hallway, a somber expression clouding his face. Rows of lockers lined the walls, the silence broken only by the echo of his thoughts. I'm sorry, my brothers, he whispered, a hint of regret in his voice. He took a deep breath and began to walk away, the determination in his step betraying his inner turmoil. "I need to survive myself," he said. He vanished down the hallway. Meanwhile, in another place, the digital world was buzzing with activity. A man with long, gray hair, a subtle cross earring glinting under the light, stared intently at his phone. "Damn, the rumors spread really fast," he exclaimed, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Our chat room is already going crazy." He smiled, a predatory grin spreading across his face as he typed away. "This will be interesting. Kenji, I like you." Soon, fueled by speculation and gossip, the rumors spread like wildfire, consuming everything in their path. They reached ears I desperately hoped to keep them from. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a man answered his phone. Shadows masked his face, leaving only the gleam of a gold ring and a thick gold chain visible. A predatory smirk played on his lips as he listened. Back at the school, despite the dismantling of Shin Jiangqiul's clique, the classroom atmosphere remained unchanged. It was a chilling observation. The fear and the unspoken power dynamics lingered. Song Jun's hand, resting reassuringly on Kenji's shoulder, observed the scene with a knowing look. "We had already expected this much," he said, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of something else. "The only difference is who they're afraid of and detest." Kenji looks a bit surprised, almost like he's just realized something major. He's thinking to himself, "I'm the one that they're afraid of and detest." You can see the confusion in his eyes, like he didn't quite grasp how he's being perceived. Then we see they are standing in a school hallway. Song Jun says, "Although it hasn't been easy for the image of Angel Kenji to crumble in such a short time, isn't this what you wanted?" His expression is more accepting, almost resigned. The Song Jun still talking. "Whether you become someone that they fear or detest would be dependent on what you do." "Well, I'm actually quite used to that already." He's slumped down in a classroom, head in his hands. We see Kenji standing further away, watching him. There's a lot of dark thoughts going on. Is that how it's supposed to be? Even if I didn't bully anyone. Then he thinks, Song Jung's image was indeed like that up till now, I guess. He's processing the fact that maybe his mere presence, his reputation, is enough to inspire fear or dislike, even if he isn't actively trying to cause it. It's a heavy realization. He seems to be coming to terms with who people think he is. He just says, almost to himself, Song Jung. Li Ji grabs Kenji by his sleeve, tugging him insistently. "Li Yiki, what are you doing?" "Sit here," she demands, pointing towards a desk beside her. Kenji, clearly taken aback by her sudden action, stammers, "But this isn't my seat, though." His eyes dart around the classroom, a mix of confusion and apprehension etched on his face. Then, Jong-Yun waves cheerfully from across the room. "Haha, your seats were changed, Kenji." His voice is laced with amusement. Kenji's expression morphs from bewilderment to mild annoyance. He turns toward the group of classmates as though in shock. He, looking rather composed with her dark hair cascading down, drops a bombshell. "Lee Do Park asked me to tell you about the super alliances," she says with a bit of a glint in her eye, I might add. Now, Kenji, slightly caught off guard, responds with an almost hesitant surprise. "Ah, that's how it is? Yeah, I guess I'd learn more about them quicker if I sat here." It's like a light bulb just went off in his head, realizing the opportunity to get some juicy info. And what does he do? He doesn't waste any time. There's a clattering sound as he pulls a desk closer, ready to settle in and listen. Then, we see E again, and this time, there's a slightly awkward, yet excited edge to her. She's holding a notepad labeled Note, and she starts, her voice a little shaky, as so. Shall we start with Sangnium High, that Park Myeon-jun is in? There's a hint of nervous anticipation in her expression, like she's about to unleash a whole load of secrets. Finally, she gathers her composure, a determined look replacing the nervousness. She smiles slightly, saying, "All right, I'll do my best to explain everything to you, starting with Sangnium High, that Park Myeong-jun is in." Seems like it's about to get interesting. They huddled over the notebook. Yi is writing something down, looking thoughtful. She says, "Okay, so Sangnium High has the Sangnium Middle School trio. They're problematic." Kenji beside her, looking a bit surprised, chimes in, "Sangnium Middle School trio is problematic? Who are they, though?" Bam! We get a dramatic reveal of the trio themselves. Three guys, looking like they're straight out of a delinquent movie. One's built like a tank, another has long, flowing hair, and the third one sports some seriously yellow-tinted glasses. The narrator chimes in. The Sangnia Middle School troublemaker trio have serious screws loose. The narration then focuses on the one with the yellow glasses, saying, among the three of them, the craziest would be Kim Jong-wai. No one knows if he went studying abroad or went to jail, so let's not talk about him first. Next up will be the second person who also disappeared suddenly without any news, Kim Yong-jeon. With the Judo Jr., he's as built as Song Jung. He calls himself Sangnium Scoundrel. Kenji of bewildered, blinking at something he's heard. Scoundrel, he repeats, the word almost foreign on his tongue. Then he steps in, kind of dismissive. I guess they just gave random nicknames for fun. You don't have to care about it, she says. But then she adds, next would be Park Myong-jun. And suddenly, the air shifts. Things get serious. Lee Dupar specifically told you to be extra careful of Park Myong-jun, she continues. Her tone suggests this is more than just a random name. He's someone who beat up a Year 3 student even before the first semester of his first year ended. He mainly uses kicks in a fight, she explains, as we can see difference in reach. Because he's a black belt in Taekwondo and a soccer maniac, he'd be a bad fit for you in a fight. It's clear this Park Myong-jun is not to be underestimated. Kenji looked thoughtful, his gaze cast downwards. I guess that's true, he mused, since I haven't fought with anyone that mainly uses kicks. Just then, a cheerful voice cut through his thoughts. So, I've also done some homework to help you master counter techniques for kicks. Count on me, Kenji, he proclaimed, flashing a peace sign and a bright smile. She was sitting across from him, a notebook open between them, and she looked genuinely happy to be helping. Later, she leaned forward, her eyes sparkling. How is it so far? I'm reliable, right? Kenji nodded, a small smile gracing his lips. Thank you, E. This is really helpful. Meanwhile, not far away, two other boys watched the scene with confusion and envy. Sengu's face etched with disbelief, sputtered, why is he sitting beside Kenji? The other, his brow furrowed, explained, she asked Jong-yoon to change Kenji's seat just now. She said that she has something to tell him. The first boy's unease was obvious. The other boy, now glaring with jealousy, scowled. Kenji said that he wanted to become Shin Jeon-cheol, and he's really done it. I'm so jealous of him being with E. His face was twisted with bitterness and longing. It was clear he thought Kenji was living his dream. He became a totally different person in a few days, and Angel Kenji is nowhere to be seen. I want to be like him, too. Lee Ji hung out with Shin Jeon-cheol and acted cocky because her brother is backing her up. And now she wants to be with my friend, Kenji. Next, we see a close-up of a clenched fist on a table. You can practically feel the Sengu's anger building. His face is contorted in disgust. The text accompanying his expression reads, he is so repulsive. This guy is clearly at the end of his rope. It appears Yi's behavior has ignited a fire, especially concerning his friend, Kenji. Kenji got this sinister grin on his face and says, thank you, Lee Ji. I'm making plans on who to beat up first. He crosses her arms and raises an eyebrow. Are you just going to thank me with words? Let's go eat tegbaki as a commemoration for me becoming your teacher from today onwards. She's clearly not intimidated. Kenji, with a slightly less menacing smile, places a hand over his heart, his tone softened. Okay, I'll treat you to tegbaki. Finally, she's leaning forward, still with that gleam in her eye. Kenji says, let's start studying them bit by bit and trash the shit out of them later. They're plotting something together, this unlikely teacher-student duo. You can tell this is going to be an interesting school year. The wooden door slides open with a screech, a sound that echoes in the silent hallway. Soo-jin enters the room, her face composed with long brown hair. She's wearing a neat white shirt, a dark tie, and a short gray skirt, completed with sporty sandals. As she steps inside, Kenji, standing nearby, gasps, his eyes wide with shock. Soo-jin. He stutters, visibly surprised by her sudden appearance. Soo-jin stops for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Kenji, she replies softly, her gaze meeting his. It seems to be a regular classroom, but you immediately feel some tension. Then our perspective shifts to Soo-jin, brown hair and bangs. Her expression is neutral, but something about her seems intense. You're looking rather smug and unimpressed. You get the feeling there's a power dynamic at play. Then, Soo-jin sees Kenji is siding with E, and her expression starts to change. It's subtle at first, but you can see the flicker of something like dread in her eyes. It seems to be affecting her deeply. This feels like the calm before a storm, you know? Kenji speaks Soo-jin's name echoed faintly in the air. The whispers intensified in the classroom as a boy focused on a girl sitting at her desk, while Sujin leaned in, covering her mouth. There were low murmurings, like leaves rustling in a storm. Suddenly, the teacher's voice boomed through the room, breaking the tension. Okay. Everyone be seated, he commanded, his voice slightly strained. Then, Sujin, her expression a blend of stoicism and a hint of sadness, spoke up. I'll leave now, teacher. The teacher, slightly taken aback, simply replied, okay. The teacher, his brow furrowed with concern, stood by the doorway. You must have a lot on your mind now, he said gently, but try to give a proper account of what happened. All right. Those who are sleeping, wake up, teacher shouts. Fa Songyun. Sujin, Kenji exclaims with a look of shock. Then, an unexpected intimacy unfolds. A hand reaches out and gently clasps another. And finally, he stares with disbelief at Kenji. Kenji, she mutters. Li Yiki. Kenji said, his voice sounding thoughtful, almost hesitant. He stood tall, a stark contrastee seated at the desk. She looked up at him, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Oh, be back after talking to her for a bit, he added, his voice low. He then reached out, gently brushing his hand against hers, a fleeting touch that seemed to linger for a moment before he pulled away. He turned and strode towards the door. You could almost hear the creak of the door as he pulled it open, his eyes set on a determined course. Inside the classroom, teacher sighed deeply. How can such a kind kid be led astray in such a short period of time? He seemed worried, his face etched with concern as he reflected on the student's situation. He glancing back over her shoulder, looking Kenji go. You get the feeling she's carrying something heavy on her mind. Then we see Sujin, she looks like she's trying to be strong, but you can see the sadness in her eyes. Next, we see a foot, clad in a white sock and an Adidas sandal, tapping impatiently on the floor. Sujin is walking away down a hallway, away from the person in the sandal. She's wearing a fitted gray skirt with her white blouse, and her long hair cascades down her back. Suddenly, Kenji's voice breaks the silence. Sujin, wait up. He looks worried and determined to catch up. If you're having any troubles, feel free to talk to me. You're the one who said we're good friends. With a decisive swish of her slides, she turned away, her tone hardening. I'm back in school to attend the school violence disciplinary meeting, not to talk to you, she stated, her back to him. Sujin, please at least contact me later, Kenji pleads, his face etched with worry. A bead of sweat trickles down his temple as he says, I haven't been able to contact you since that incident, and I've been really worried. But Sujin is having none of it. Turning her head slightly, a flicker of something hard glints in her eyes as she retorts, just, how miserable do you want me to be? There's a weariness in her expression, a sense of being pushed too far. She doesn't seem sympathetic to his worry. She turns away from him completely, her back to Kenji. I need to get going quickly. I'm going off now, she says with sharp finality. The sound of her abrupt movement punctuates her words. Kenji can only stare at her retreating figure. Sujin, he whispers, a silent plea left unanswered. He looks defeated, almost crushed by her rejection. Now, Sujin's face is shown again, but this time she's not indifferent. Her brow is furrowed, and a tear is welling in her eye. Kenji, you seriously have become bad. She whispers, a raw pain in her expression. You said that you've got no one except for me. You liar. Kenji says, Sujin, please give me a moment. Sweat is starting to bead on his brow. He's clearly flustered. He's reaching out, trying to stop Sujin walking ahead of him. Kenji is left behind, his voice trailing off. Sujin, he looks absolutely distraught, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and regret. Bam! We're in a classroom. Teacher, standing at the chalkboard, writing away with chalk. He looks a little more composed, maybe trying to regain control of the situation by focusing on his work. Finally, we see a close-up of E with a piercing gaze. She's staring intensely, lost in thought. You can tell she's not to be messed with. The door slid open. Kenji is back, and he sits next to E. An awkward silence hung between them. The woman, concern etched on her face, leaned forward slightly. Kenji, are you okay? She asked, her voice filled with genuine worry. Kenji, sitting across from her at the wooden table, seemed lost in thought. His thoughts swirled with regret and confusion. I only try to become a bad person because of Sujin, he thought, the words echoing in his mind with a heavy weight. But can't we even be friends now? His gaze dropped, his expression a mixture of sadness and frustration. Seeing his distress, spoke again, her voice softer this time. Hey, Kenji, I asked if you're okay. Kenji, clearly flustered, slapping on a fake smile and booming, sorry, I'm okay, ha 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 ha. He's got a hand awkwardly behind his head, like he's trying to play it cool. But then, he's staring him down with a look that could curdle milk. Her eyes are saying everything he's trying to hide. She thought you're totally not okay. He's seriously too nice for his own good. I guess that's what I like about him too, but we see them together, sitting in a classroom. She's got her arms crossed, all business, while he's slumped in his chair, looking utterly defeated. There's a weight in his posture, a shadow hanging over him. Even more hunched over in his chair, he thought, I only became bad because of Su-jin, but what I'm going to do from now is no longer because of her. It's a declaration, a turning point perhaps. He says, Kenji, we don't have to eat tteokbokki if you're having a hard time. It shows she cares about him and wants to be there for him, whether or not he is willing to admit he needs it. He's standing and he's practically shouting, It's okay. Let's go eat it together. I'm really okay. I want to eat tteokbokki as well. You can almost see the desperation radiating off him with those little sweat droplets around his head. He agrees to eat tteokbokki, but she's thinking to herself, I guess eating spicy food might help him to relieve some stress. She seems a little concerned about him. Next thing you know, Kenji's practically bursting with excitement. He's got this dramatic background effect going on, like he's a superhero. He's yelling, Guys, let's go eat tteokbokki together. He's standing at the front, arms outstretched, announcing, I'll be treating everyone today. The other students look either confused. Finally, you sit down, looking completely exasperated. She's got her hand on her forehead, and she's thinking, Kenji, what's wrong with this bastard? So, clearly, whatever he's doing is not working, and she's totally over his antics. Sanggu, an other guy, practically bouncing with excitement. Sanggu shouts, Oh, tteokbokki sounds good. I want to go too. The other one chimes in right away with, My friend, Kenji is asking. Of course, I have to go. They seem genuinely stoked about the prospect of some spicy rice cakes and hanging out with their friend. Songjun, with a weary expression, sighs heavily, clearly annoyed by their enthusiasm. He mutters, Read the atmosphere, you guys. It's obvious he thinks they're being insensitive or missing some crucial social cues. And then Jongyun, looking really nervous and sweaty, adds, I don't think we should go, though. He's clearly sensing something is wrong and is trying, probably rather timidly, to hint that they should avoid whatever's happening. There's a palpable sense of unease and curiosity in their silent glances. A disturbingly forced smile. She says, Why are you guys acting like that? Let's all go eat together, It's a total facade. You can tell that something sinister underlies that forced cheerfulness. The aroma of spicy tteokbokki wafted through the air. The tray, overflowing with glistening red-orange rice cakes swimming in a thick, flavorful sauce, was a siren's call to anyone with a love for Korean cuisine. Then, we cut to a group of high school boys huddled around a table, clearly enjoying their meal. The guy with the bowl cut was practically inhaling the tteokbokki, his cheeks puffed out like a squirrel hoarding nuts. He mumbled, savoring every bite. Sanggu was grinning like a mischievous imp, his eyes practically sparkling with delight. He even let out a little hee, clearly enjoying the moment. Songjun was clearly thinking about someone. He said, This is delicious. I need to buy some for Daeun. Finally, we see our couple, also digging into the delicious tteokbokki. Kenji complimented, This is delicious. Looks like you're good at eating spicy food. Coolly sipped from her cup and simply replied, Well, I guess you can say that. Lee Ji, with her long, dark hair and gentle eyes, held a small paper cup. Kenji, I don't know what you and Han Sujin talked about, but she said softly, You can talk to me if you're having a hard time. Kenji listened, his face a little sad. He replied quietly. Okay, thanks, He sat down later, a small smile on his face. He looked relaxed. Then his phone buzzed. He picked it up, his expression changing as he read the message. The screen showed a message from Chief Kong. Young master, you need to come back earlier today. The easy smile disappeared. A serious, almost troubled look took its place. Is something wrong? The man's brow furrowed, his dark eyes focused. He seemed to try to read someone's thoughts. He was at a restaurant. Songjun bought some for his little sister also. The cook, a kind older woman in an apron, said warmly, Enjoy. Outside the restaurant, all the Kenji's friends stood in a line. He looked eager to study more with Kenji, you know what I mean. But Kenji responded, sorry. I need to go back first. Something came up at home. He mumbled. His hand awkwardly scratched the back of his head. He was standing next to E, but her face was completely blank, unnervingly so. Song Jun stammered, let's go, guys. He was surrounded by his friends, but their expressions seemed forced, almost mocking. Yeah, let's go, they chanted. He wasn't happy. Her brow furrowed in frustration as she muttered to herself. Ugh, let's hold it in. Kenji was a loser before. I need to accommodate him. Finally, Kenji, a forced smile playing on his lips, said, I'll contact you later in the evening. Are you asking to meet me at night? Li Ji's eyes widened. Her face flushed a delicate pink as the words exploded from her mouth. Where? She stammered, the surprise practically radiating off her. Kenji tilted his head slightly, his expression calm and thoughtful. Where else? Of course, we're meeting at your house. Wouldn't my house be uncomfortable since my uncles will be there? Or we could meet at a reading room or something, he offered. He ran a hand through his hair, a slight furrow appearing on his brow. Yi's face was red, and steam rose from her hair. No, my house is just like a reading room. My house is like a meditation room, she exclaimed. She was desperately trying to salvage the situation. A bead of saliva escaped from her mouth, emphasizing her anxiety. The young man chuckled, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Okay, I'll call you later in the evening then, he said, his eyes twinkling. They parted ways, waving casually to each other. See you later, he called out, a mix of excitement and trepidation in her voice. See you, E, he replied, his voice full of warmth. As they walked in opposite directions, he turned back to look at him and blushed. It was obvious this date was going to be a blast. The woman's eyes are wide, and a manic grin is plastered across her face as she furiously types away on her phone. You can practically hear the frantic tapping of her fingers as she punches out a message. Her dark hair swirls around her face like a storm cloud, matching the energy she's radiating. The scene shifts, and now we're high above, overlooking a school building. The sky is a mix of pale blues and muted oranges, hinting at either the start or end of the day. Two men stand on a rooftop, their backs to us, discussing something serious. One of them states matter-of-factly, "You probably know that Shin Jiang-cheol has been expelled, right?" One, with slick-back hair and wearing glasses, confirms the expulsion, then adds, "The rest of them would either be suspended or assigned to community service." Duo Park casually replies, "Yeah." The air hung heavy with unspoken tension as Dae Hyen fixed a sharp gaze on the man before him. "I have no idea what your plan is right now," he stated, his tone laced with a hint of frustration. "What are you trying to achieve by getting rid of Shin Jiang-cheol and his clique to this extent?" I wonder, Duo Park mused. "I'm thinking of supporting Kenji." A dark thought in his mind. Supporting Kenji and supporting my sister would eventually lead to my own benefit. Dae Hyen's eyebrows shot up, a mixture of surprise and skepticism on his face. Supporting Kenji? I'm with you on this. If it's Kenji, Dae Hyen stated, a hint of determination creeping into his voice. A sly smile tugged at the corner of the Duo Park's lips. "To think that you're not going against what I'm doing," he chuckled softly. "Is it because he was supposed to be the next student council president?" He paused, then said, "Dae Hyen, I'll explain my plans to you in detail next time." His smile widened, revealing a hint of the ambition that drove him. "Making fire my great plan. It starts with this guy. He looks like he's sweating bullets, muttering under his breath. Making fire You can tell he's under pressure, probably hatching some kind of plan, and it's clearly stressing him out. Then Duo Park, casually holding a phone, sees the first guy, and he's all, "What's that?" But before he gets an answer, his phone buzzes. He looks at the screen and exclaims, "Oh, how does she know that I'm talking about her right now?" You see the text messages on the phone? Harsh warnings. "Come back later today. I'll kill you if you come back early. I've warned you." And another one. "Read this quickly if you don't want to die. Read it quickly." Finally, the guy with the phone explodes in anger, clutching his phone like he's about to crush it. He's completely livid and says, "This F-King be word. If not for the making fire plan, I'd have beat the shit out of her even if she was my own sister." He is really, really mad, and it looks like this making fire plan is the only thing stopping him from going off the rails. So that's all for this part 1. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want more, please comment in the comment section, and you don't forget to share and subscribe my channel. Thanks, I'm out.